is almost here. But that means that we need to get cool, calm, and collected. We need to get prepared. Oh my gosh, time is fleeting. I don't know if it's just me, but I always find that the second half of the year seems to go so much faster than the first half. And given that I feel like the first half of the year already went kind of quickly, it's a panic. Nah, we'll be fine. But if you have not already got your Change Your Life workbook, it's all good. It's free. You can go grab it from our resource library. So you just need to jump over there. There is a link in the description box, or you can scan the QR code on screen. If you're looking for this one, I recently went in and tidied up the resource library a little. It was getting a little unwieldy. There was a lot of files in a lot of different places. So it is in the folder called like goal getting. It's one of the first folders that's in there. It has the Change Your Life workbook and a couple other resources that you can use to help you with your goal getting and goal setting and planning and all of those kind of things. So this is the one that we're going to be working through today. You do not actually have to use the workbook itself. You can just, do this on scrap paper or do it in the back of your journal or something, just anywhere where you can really write stuff down. Because we do have a few pages in here that are just information based, whereas other ones are more kind of like structured to help you figure things out. So if you're doing it on scrap paper, you might want a couple pieces of scrap paper. If you're doing it in your notebook or in a planner, you might want a couple of free spreads to be able to do all of those bits and pieces. But this one, free download, just jump over into the resource library, QR code, or the link in the description. When you print yours, it will not look as sickly green as mine because my printer and I are having beef, all right? I don't know what it is. There was this period where it would not print in yellow, so I tried to power clean the nozzles as many times as needed to get the yellow back, and then the magenta stopped working. So everything in my one looks just a little bit off. She's looking a little unwell, isn't she? But if you print this off in your printer and you are not having beef like me and my printer are, then yours will be just fine. So in terms of this workbook that has been around since like the start of the year or whatnot, it has recently gotten a bit of an update. So a couple things have changed. If you have an older copy, it's cool. You can still use it totally fine. The changes aren't like so super major that you won't be able to get value out of it. It's just that there are some things that have been adjusted in here. One of those things is the fact that this part used to tell you about the Epic Goals Club. The Epic Goals Club is actually closing because I'm merging all of the perks from that one with the team membership we have over here on YouTube for the team with a capital T. So if you're part of the team with a capital T, then you will be receiving the perks associated with this. So a bit of information there just in case you're curious, but flipping on over, we are into our first activity. Now, typically when I'm working through this, I don't actually go through page by page because some of these pages are kind of supposed to be used adjacent to each other. So it's a little bit easier when you can see both of them at once. So these ones are buddies. The first thing we want to do when planning for our best quarter yet is actually to just acknowledge that there are probably already things scheduled for the next quarter and we should probably account for them, right? It's all good and well to come into a new quarter being like, oh my God, I'm going to work on these like 15 different projects and each of them are going to take up at least a full week of my time. And there's only 13 weeks in the quarter, and we also haven't accounted for the fact there's probably other stuff going on. So first port of call is actually just get really clear on how much time you do have available to work on stuff. Because if you're taking, like, I don't know, a week-long trip somewhere in the middle, that's a decent chunk of time that is not getting dedicated to goal work, probably, unless your goal is to have a great trip, which is a very fair goal. Totally fine for that. But also things like, work trips, work days, events with family, appointments that are going to take up a decent chunk of your time. All of those things are going to slowly chip away at the amount of time that you kind of thought you had available over the entire of the quarter. Now, this one is set up so that it has a decent number of weeks. I do my planning on a quarterly system of 13 weeks, so I will not need to use all of these, but some people prefer to do their quarters from the first day of the first month to the last day of the third month. So because of that, that's why it's structured like this. Mine is going to just be from the Monday through to the Sunday of a 13-week block of time. But so as you can see, we have an instructional list of how to use this one, just in case you're looking at this what am I supposed to do with that? What's the point? First things first, prepare your calendar. All right, so we need to label the top row with each day of the week. The reason it is not labeled for you is because some people prefer Monday, some people prefer Sunday, some people prefer a Tuesday, just depending on how their work works. So I'm just going to go and write in the initials, M, T, W, T, F, S, S. Now, as we're going through this, it is totally fine for this to be messy. That's why it's on a separate workbook. This is why I don't usually put it in my planner, because I get Yeah, you may have noticed just a little particular about how my planner looks. I'm a little bit of a, how one would say, persnickety biscuit about it. I like it to look very visually appealing. This is my messy space. This is the place where I can just scribble things down, jot things down and then cross them out because I put them on the wrong day or whatever, and not feel that kind of resistance to write things down. And that's why it's kind of nice having it in a separate space, for me at least. For other people, they're like, no, my plan is totally fine to be messy. I could, okay with putting it in there. It's all goods. I'm not that person. I applaud you. But so we have, haha, check this off. This is also why they're done a circle, so that we can get that satisfaction of checking things off. So the top row, done. Week numbers down the side. So this one you can either number as the weeks of the quarter, so like 1 through 13, or you could number them based on the year-long calendar if you like. So given that we're moving into quarter 3, I'm going to number them that way because I just follow the numbers through for the entire of the year. So for me, that'll be 27, 28, 29, 30, so on and so forth. So let's see, she can like actually write these out without having to number them off out loud. I'm already really worried. The ones that I always forget are the doubles. I go, oh yeah, 32, 34, because I'm like, you already wrote a 3. You don't need to write another 3. 36, 37, 38, and 39. I won't need this last one because that'll be in quarter 4. Oh my gosh. Quarter 4 feels like it's so far away, but I know this time is going to go so quickly. Oh, sorry you were watering your watermelon. Fun. And pumpkin. Nice. I hope they are growing well. So once we have done that, check that off. We can also go and label the boxes with the dates that they represent, if that is something that is helpful for you, because I know for a lot of people, they're like, oh yeah, I know I have something on the 3rd of June. I don't know what week number the 3rd of June is in. So for me, I usually just write down the number. I don't bother to write in the month because from context, I kind of know which month is roughly where. Like this is going to roughly be July, roughly August, roughly September. So that would be the 29th and then the 30th of June, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. Just making sure that when you get to the end of the month, you don't just kind of keep going. You're like 42, 43, which can definitely happen. But as I said, this is a messy space. It's all good if you kind of stuff something up and have to cross it out. That is the point. So 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, so on and so forth. And part of the reason why I didn't pre-number this is mainly so that you can take this workbook and use it for any period of time. You don't have to just use it for a quarter that I define. It could be a quarter that, is your personal definition. Maybe you like to do your quarters based on the seasons or when like the equinoxes are or something like that. I do mine based on, here is a calendar year, like January through December, first 3, second 3, third 3, fourth 3, roughly. More like, first 13 weeks, second 13 weeks, so on and so forth. But we'll just finish putting all of these in. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. And usually when I get to the end of a month, I will just go back and recheck what I'm going to call a real calendar, or one that's like, digital or whatever, so that I can just make sure that I've got the right number of days in there. So yes, the 31st of July should be on a Friday. That's looking good. So I can continue on, because at least if I do stuff something up, like, let's just say that the 31st is actually on a Thursday and I've kind of, put in an extra day, then I can make the change here and follow through with the more correct numbers, as opposed to just continuing on, kind of compacting my mistakes, compounding them with other ones that I might make. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18. Yeah, this is obviously the most exciting part. Not really. I actually do, though, really love getting a full bird's eye view of a 3-month period, because there's not a lot of structures in my life outside of this where I get that, outside of the ones that I make for myself, obviously. Because Outlook calendar, which is what I use as my digital calendar, that one you can see a month-long snapshot, so like that's fine, but you can't really see longer than that. And then if we're thinking of like a monthly overview, it's obviously still a month. A weekly overview, that's just a week. But being able to see everything all together all at once, that feels very satisfying. All right, 31st of August. Is it actually a Monday? Ah, look at me go. Yay, it is. So continuing on. Oh, we never make it live, but we're here late. Oh, good. Glad to have you here with us. 3, 4, 5, 6. If you are planning along with us, let us know. Like, are you using your workbook or are you going to be doing it on like scrap paper or whatnot? And if you're not doing this specific planning, what are you up to? What are we chilling out doing together? I would love to know. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. And now for some people, they'd be like, no, 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 I want to go all the way to the end of September. So then they would have 28, 29, and 30. And they can also have the remaining days if they want, 2, 3, 4. There we go. See, stuffed that one up. Wrote 3 down instead of 2. Knew that there was going to be a stuff up somewhere. So this is week 40, but it's not a week that I'm actually concerning myself with. I'll just put a little line here to remind myself that's as far as I'm going. But we can check that part off. The really hard work is done. We have prepared our calendar. Now, if you were doing this in a digital space or whatnot, you can probably, just set this up in Excel if you wanted to. You could set yourself something up on like Microsoft Office, like Pages or like whatever, anything like that. Just give yourself a table, boxes to write in, makes it nice and easy. Obviously, we're doing ours on paper today, or at least that's what I'm doing. So need to write a whole bunch of stuff down. Putting away groceries, another thing off the to-do list. Yay, good work. All right, filling out your workbook and trying to write the numbers you are saying out loud. So sorry. I'll keep it to myself. Keep that as an internal thought. Working the 9 to 5 and doing the workbook. Nice. They're happy you work from home. Very that. I won't tell your boss if you don't. I'm sure that it's like, this could be work related. I'm planning out my work calendar for the, quarter 3. But so next thing to do is cross out any date ranges that fall outside of your next quarter. So for some people, they might cross out the 29th and the 30th because they're like, no, my quarter is calendar like month based. I'm going from the 1st of July through to the 30th of September. So they could cross out those ones. I'm not going to do that, but I can cross out the ones for week 40 because week 40 doesn't count for me. So I just like to cross them like this, because then I can very clearly see that those ones are not being used. Some people prefer a scribble, whatever floats your boat. That works for me. So we have crossed out any of those days because we are just focusing on this snapshot of time. Yes, the year does continue and there are other things that are happening, but just this one. I'm just sitting and listening to you. Oh, good. Happy to keep you company. Getting your Hobonichi weeks out so that you can plan along. Nice. Ew, what, 2,178 words total today. Great work. Yay. Now, the only bad thing about household chores is that, she can read. They jumped. Only bad thing about household chores on the to-do list is they always come back. I know, right? And like that kind of like certain tasks that we have for ourselves, I see them as very kind of like cyclical. So it's like, oh yeah, you do the thing and then it comes back around, you do the thing. Or sometimes it's like, multi-step. So I collect the laundry, I wash the laundry, I dry the laundry, I get it out of the dryer and stare at it for a few days. I finally put it away. Oh, look, it's next week and we're going to do it all again. Oof. Ooh, setting up for next journal and realizing it starts Monday. Ooh. Oh, really? Wow, that's soon. Well, hey, that's exciting. I still have a week and a couple days until I have to start in my new journal, which means I have a little bit more time to get things planned out in there. But now as we have this, using your planner or calendar, mark in when you won't be available to do goal work. Be sure to include any events and appointments, holidays, and travel periods. So this is mainly thinking about those big ticket items that are going to take some time away from you. But what I have also done is that each of these boxes, you can maybe very faintly see it, has been separated into 3. So what you can do for this, and what I kind of personally prefer to do, is think about my day in these chunks and like what is happening on, a Monday morning, and will that take away from my goal work? What's happening on, a typical Wednesday evening, and will that take away from my goal work? I like to think about the 3 as kind of like before lunch, after dinner in a way. And to note things down in here, I'm just going to use color because it's easier. I've got my little, I guess it's technically a makeup bag. My mom gave it to me, but I just keep my pens in here. I love a pencil bag. Pencil cases and pencil bags make my heart happy. But this is going to be time that I'm not available, so I'm going to do this in this kind of pink tone, mainly because, it just reminds me that my printer didn't have any pink ink to share with me, so everything's a little bit blue and yellow tinted. But in terms of these like big ticket things, what I have going on for next quarter is honestly not a lot, I feel, which I am actually super excited for. I don't think I have any trips away, which is going to be so nice. Which that's not to say I don't like trips away. Oh my gosh, yay. But at the same time, the pre-planning to go on the trip away and then the recovery after, I'm just like, ugh. Are they cats on the inside? I think that they're just little stamps of some description. Yeah, I think they're just little stamps from this whatever brand it is, but it's pretty cute though. It fits these pens really nicely, and that's why I quite like it. It's actually like a kind of perfect fit, but without being so snug that you can't get the pen out. So, going through calendars, I'm literally just going through my Outlook calendar at the moment to try and find things that are happening. So, I have a games day on this day, and that's probably going to be in the afternoon and evening. So that is time that I won't have to work on goals because I'll be hanging with my friends. I also have another separate games day, which is the afternoon and probably evening of the next weekend. So we can mark this in. Again, not being too precious about making sure that it's really, really neat. You just need it to be neat enough so that the information actually makes sense. For instance, given the fact that I'm trying to go in here and mark in particular times of the day, I want to make sure that I try and stick to the actual regions of the box that are going to be representative. If I kind of went in here and went, oh yeah, scribble, scribble, scribble across the entire day, it's like, okay, so that morning you can't do anything, which isn't necessarily the case. Let's see. Big ticket things. We're looking for the things that are out of the ordinary mainly. And at this stage, I don't have a lot, which is nice. So that is week 28. Yep. She can count. Probably something on week 29, because we'll probably have a family games, a lot of games days. We're just like organizing all of them. So that's probably going to be about here. Which I'd say I can't really do anything before lunch because I'll probably be getting ready. So we'll just go across here. Now, my pen that I have used to write in these numbers, not waterproof at all. So keep that in mind when you go over with your pens. You just don't want to have a kind of like sad, smudgy pen because it picked up the black ink from your other pen. Alrighty. What if you have goals within different categories? Like I have goals that need to be done during my workday, but I wouldn't be able to do other types of goals during that time. Great question. So what you can do if you want to, signify that on your calendar is I would probably just color code boxes of time. So for instance, I'm just going in here and putting everything in this red, pink color to be like, no goal work. But technically speaking, one of my goals is social connection, and all of those are social connection activities. So all of them are actually kind of related to the goal. So what I could do is, anything that was social connection related, I could go in and give it this color specifically because I can do that goal at that time, but I'm not going to work on something that's like a very kind of, personal goal or work-related goal or something that you wouldn't do while you were chilling out in the company of other people. So kind of similar idea for your work one. If you're going in and you're marking out your, big ticket work things, because I'm still doing the big ticket stuff, the next one that I'll do is the regular kind of, every day, every week kind of things. But you just go in and mark those in with, for me, work is blue. So I would go and mark it in as blue. But that effectively just gives me that visual representation to say like, okay, the blue spaces, I can't do personal goals for it then. I'm not going to be working on any personal project. I'm not going to be decluttering my house. I'm not going to yada, yada, yada. But I could do my professional goals, the ones that are, actually more appropriate to do during my work hours. But good question. Alrighty. So that was assumed family games day. Nice, nice, nice. This one, don't have anything on. Good. This one, don't have anything on. Good. That one, don't have anything on. Nothing for that one. Nothing for that one. There's not a lot in my calendar, and I'm like so excited for it because it means that I can fill it with fun stuff. All right. I think that's actually all of my big ticket things. And it is fairly typical if you're the kind of person who doesn't schedule events out too far in advance to have maybe kind of the first part of the next quarter be a little bit more front loaded, whereas the back part of the quarter to be a little bit lighter. That's not to say that things won't come up throughout. So we also want to make sure that we build some buffer in, but that's a little bit later. Alrighty, next question. What if you know you will have a regular appointment like games day every 2, 3 weeks, but nothing is scheduled yet because it's scheduled after each session? Do I still plan ahead for those? Yes, I definitely would recommend that. Um, so if we have a look like here, for the remaining time, like this is number 5, we haven't quite gotten onto this, but for any unforeseen circumstances that may limit your use of this time, make sure that you kind of account for that. Yes, this is kind of in the context of, maybe you're sick, maybe you're ill, yada yada, but you can also use that for things that you expect are coming up, even if you don't necessarily know the exact day. Because I'm not going to be using this as a kind of very strict schedule to say, like, oh, okay, very specifically, this day is not going to be able to be used. So I need to schedule things on other days that aren't that one. And then, maybe Family Games Day gets moved to the Saturday, and it's like, cool, my Saturday plans are ruined now because I planned to do all this goal work or whatever. Um, so if we think about it in terms of those events that they're coming up, but you don't know exactly when they are, I would still mark them down on an approximation of when you think they might be, because we're really just using this to get a picture of how much time do I have available, but it is still very kind of wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. Like it can all move, it can all shift. So for instance, we have not actually scheduled in a Family Games Day for this day, but I know that we typically try to do it the weekend of the third weekend, like whatever would have the third Sunday roughly of the month. So yeah, I've marked it in for Sunday, but it might end up being a Saturday kind of a thing. Um, so this is kind of just to give you an appreciation of how much time is getting eaten away by your commitments, rather than saying specifically this Sunday is like off the table, you can't use it. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Alrighty, so how would you handle having no big ticket events to limit you, but you only have a very small amount of actual available energy to use? I I mean, the I guess it's all good if there's one step in here where you're just like, "Oh, I have nothing to write down." That is totally fine. And for a lot of people, they may not have big ticket out of the ordinary events, but their regular schedule, which is what we're gonna go and put in next, is, like, really packed. Or they find that even though, from a glance, they have a lot of, quote, "downtime," or, free time, the actual, like, usability of that time, they already know is limited. And that's kind of what we get onto in the next kind of points. So we'll work through these ones and then we'll have a look at what other questions you guys have because I love question time. So we've done number 3. We've used our planner or calendar to mark in when we aren't going to be available because we have those out of the ordinary things going on. So events and appointments, holidays, travel periods. I guess you could say that roughly every 3 weeks on a Tuesday, I have an afternoon appointment. So week 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So I'll have it like roughly 1, 2, roughly then. So those ones all need to go in 1, 2, 3. So that'll be roughly on those periods. The only one of these that's actually scheduled in though is that one. That is the only one that is actually scheduled in. It's just that I know that I aim to do another appointment booking every 3 weeks for it. So that may not actually end up being like the reality of my situation, but it at least accounts for the fact that that's the interval that I like to do that thing on, so I can put that one in. Alrighty, next one. Mark in any regular weekly and monthly commitments that will limit your goal time across the quarter. So this could be things like, oh, I have a meeting for my kids' soccer team every Friday night or something. I don't know. These are your appointments. If we're thinking about my regular appointments, I know that I'm going to just turn this because it'll be easier for me to do it quickly. Every Monday morning, I am going to be doing a live stream for the team with a capital T, which is our new work along sessions. So every Monday morning, my time, which is for most of them Sunday afternoon to Sunday evening, I am not going to be available to do goal work because I'm going to be working on that. All right, so that's something that I need to account for. I know that every Wednesday evening, I hang out with my friends. That's the midweek mafia hangout. This is again one of those opportunities where, I could have actually color coded this more appropriately and said like, oh yeah, well, even though it's technically not really time to do my personal goal work, like, declutter your house or, do a home project or whatever else, it is still time that I'm spending with my friends. And if my goal is social connection, technically it fits the bill, but we'll put those ones in. I also know that one of my regular Thursday evening appointments is a date night with Vogel. Now, is that Thursday every single week? No, some weeks we do it on a Tuesday evening, but that's okay because this is just to give me a visual representation of the rough amount of time I actually have available. So color that in, color that in, color that in. Now you might come in here and say like, okay, well, my job and what I do for my job does not allow me to do any goal work. Or you may know that like the type of goals that you are probably going to set for yourself aren't going to be related to your 9 to 5. So you might come in and block off the first 2 boxes for every weekday for this entire calendar. That's totally fine. All right, we're really just trying to get a realistic picture of how much time you actually have available here. And that's kind of thinking in terms of taking time to solely do goal work. Because, yes, this is just kind of, looking very kind of broad brushstrokes in a way, saying like, oh yeah, the entire of this Sunday, I can't do any goal work. I'm like, your family's not getting here at midnight and leaving again at midnight. Technically there's like, a 15-minute or a 5-minute pocket in there somewhere, either at the start or the end of the day where you can do something. But it really just kind of gives you that appreciation to say, okay, yeah, my entire calendar is full of color now. So if I'm going to work on my goal work, I should not be planning for or expecting those really big blocks of like deep work time. I'm going to have to structure my goals and pick them such that they can be fit into those little pockets of time that are between tasks, or things that I could do on a commute, or things that I can do, between meetings in a way. And I'm not trying to like, overload our calendar or whatnot. We're just trying to get really realistic about what our reality is. How much, larger blocks of time do we have available? If you have some, sweet. If you have some that you are actually going to be doubling, sweet. Yes, we want to make sure that we actually can use the time that we've said we had available, because, at the moment there are a lot of open spaces on this calendar, but it doesn't really account for all of the stuff that is going to fill that by default, right? Just because there is open space on here doesn't mean that every minute or, hour of it is going to be used for goal work. But sorry you're late. Pup decided it was cuddle time. Aw, well, I feel like that's a very decent reason to be late. It's all good. You are exactly on time. Tink, what are we drinking today? I have water because it's really exciting. I could totally go for a Coke Zero though, but alas. So what I could technically do here, because I do know that there is going to be, my regular work hours or work time. Some of my goals are work related, so I can do goal work during those periods, but I kind of aim roughly to keep a 9 to 5 for my job, at least for Monday through Friday. So for the rest of the time that is in those slots, I can just go and mark in to say like, okay, you could do goal work as long as it is professional goal work in these kind of blocks, if you so desire. So we can kind of go and mark those in as well if you wanted to. You don't have to use multiple colors. I just think it makes it a little more fun. And plus, if it's really that kind of appreciation of how you can use your time, if that's something that's going to help you very clearly see what is or isn't usable time for you, then yay, multiple colors it is. There we go. We'll put all of these ones in. Now, a general recommendation, because I literally just said like, oh yeah, use multiple colors if you want. Try not to get too granular with this. You can start to get very specific and be like, oh, well, between the hours of 9 and 10 on a Tuesday, I can't do goal work. But, I could do it between the hour of 10 and 10:30 or something like that. The actual time for, very precise scheduling is not now. This is the broad brushstrokes. This is the kind of, general blocks of time, very roughly, that may be available. Mainly so we can see how much time do I have available, and thus how many goals maybe do I want to work on. Because if you only have, let's just say that according to your calendar, every Thursday evening is your free time. That is the time that you would actually have like a dedicated chunk of time that you could do goal work. We don't want to then be trying to cram 15 different goals into that one larger chunk of time that you have available. For me, obviously, like I try to keep my weekends fairly free, but that's not to say that more social events aren't going to pop up and kind of populate in here. So at the moment, things are looking very open, very clear. Like, wow, I have 2 full days every single week of these weeks to get goal work done. That will not be the reality of my situation by the time that I get to it. So I need to make sure I account for those as well. Mark in any regular time across the week and month that will limit your goal time. Okay, so anything in purple here is definitely stuff that's like, yeah, no, you could do goal work, but it's work time. And anything in this kind of red color for me is like, unless you're doing social tasks on these kind of days here, then it's not going to be goal work time for you. Yeah, Sprite here, delicious. We like a good Sprite. Drinking a Dr. K. What's a Dr. K? No, I don't think I've heard of a Dr. K before. I've heard of Dr. Pepper, but that's different. Alrighty, water, water, water. Oh, good job, squad. Like with your water, yeah, water squad. Fixing dinner, so can't be here for the whole thing, but I'm gonna watch it back since it's all cleaned up. Everyone's all cleaned up. Excellent, all good. Yeah, we're happy to have you here for as long as you can be. So, for the remaining time, account for unforeseen circumstances that may limit your use of this time. This could be due to illness, periods of lower energy, or anything else that comes up. So for me, I know that roughly every 2 weeks I have some kind of social event. That's like a very rough approximation. So I know approximately this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. There's going to be at least one day that I don't get to use. So even though it's not an actual like set thing at this current point in time, I'm just going to go and mark in, hey, every second weekend, we're just going to assume that there is a full day that I can't use for one reason or another. Now, this is also where you would account for things like I know that typically towards the end of each week, even though the time is available for me, I'm low energy and I just don't want to do anything. So maybe we go and say, like, okay, every Friday evening, even though technically the time is available, I'm probably going to be burnt out from the week and just want to sit on my couch and do nothing. Alrighty, so I'm going to mark that off. And that's not to say that that has to happen. It does not have to be your reality, because some weeks maybe you're just like, oh, I have an unexpected burst of energy and I totally could use that time. But we don't want to rely on the what if situation, because often that will just lead to disappointment. We don't want to be disappointed, all right? We want to be like, what I'm going to say, kind of like optimistic, but tentatively optimistic about the time. We don't want to, put on our kind of, rose tinted glasses for the future. I don't know what the actual terminology for that is, and expect future us to be this kind of like superhuman person who isn't burdened by any of our very real, very current struggles, kind of thing. So other things that typically come up for me are, we're just going to say that there's probably, typically, on a Saturday morning, I usually like to watch a little YouTube, and I like that. I like that kind of routine for myself, right? I like to have a slow start on a Saturday morning, so we're just going to block that off, and it's usually also accompanied by responding to comments on YouTube and such. So there's stuff to do, but this is kind of what my time is looking like now. Obviously, there are only 2 days that do not have anything marked on them. And that's because I already know that I don't have a social event booked for this day or that one thus far. Could happen. But every other day on here does not have a full, dedicated goal day's worth of time. Totally fine. What I would like to do at this point is then effectively go through and count the number of open blocks that I have for myself to say this is how many like rough periods that I have, remembering that the way that I structured this calendar was that each of these cells is broken down into like morning, afternoon, evening. So according to mine, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 48. Trying to do it in my head as much as possible. 48, 49, 50, 51. Right, 51 here. 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69. 69. Very good. So I have 69 blocks that I have left open. That's not to say that the time will actually be available to me, but we then take that, divide it by 3, because I have, these 3 blocks per day. So if I'm trying to find my daily amount, can she do this in her head? 23. So that is 23 days-ish, quote, quote, that I have available across this entire quarter. And then what, in terms of the actual number of days that is, can she do that math in her head? Probably not. What's 13 times 7? 13 times 7? 1, 2, 91. So out of the 91 days across the entire of the quarter, I have approximately 23 days worth of time available to me, roughly, right? This doesn't account for sickness, though. I haven't really gone and built that into my calendar. It does account for, not really wanting to do anything on a Friday night, but it doesn't account for the fact that some of that time may be taken away from me for things. It's also very notably not 23 days straight. So this is what, give or take, roughly about a little under a third. How much is a third? A third of this would be like 30-ish, right? So it's less than a third of the time that I have across the quarter is actually available for goal work, right? This is really just an activity, an exercise, if you will, to get yourself kind of in that mindset of, yeah, sure, I have 13 weeks, but not all of that 13 weeks is available to me. So if I pile exactly 13 weeks worth of work on myself in terms of my goals, I will get to the end of the quarter probably disappointed because realistically, I didn't have 13 full weeks to work on that stuff. All right. So over here, I have roughly, 23 days to work on my goals for next quarter. So how many goals do I realistically see that I could get done in that period of time? This is just a rough estimate. It is not something to like really super hold yourself to. But it also kind of depends on what the size of your goals are. Like, if it's the kind of thing that is one of those really long-term goals that you only work on a very small amount of every single day or something. But it can be beneficial to give yourself a soft limit, just so that then when, you're going into the next stages where we start brainstorming our goals and thinking about like what we could do, you don't let your eyes bigger than stomach kind of moment and you're like, oh, I'm going to work on this laundry list of things when realistically the time you had available is not going to account for that. So we did this part. I am going to set no more than, because I know my goals, or I don't know my goals already, but I have already kind of started brainstorming them. I'm not going to set more than, I'm going to say 13. That may be unrealistic, but it feels safe, mainly because I know that some of those are just going to be very small things that need to get done. Now, just like we talked about before, just because you have indicated that you do not have time to work on a goal on these days doesn't mean you won't be working on goals these days. For instance, let's just say that your goal was to improve your flexibility or whatnot. You could probably find a 5-minute period of time on a lot of these days to do some stretches. It doesn't need to be, a full kind of like half-hour stretching routine, workout, whatever. But even on the days where I'm fully booked up, I could probably find a 5-minute pocket of time to do the stretches. I mean, the question is, will I? Stretching is not one of my goals currently, but so that is definitely something to consider. Like, just because the day is in theory booked up with, the highlights that we've done, that doesn't mean that there is no available time. Now, moving on. Well, I guess before we move on, does anybody have any questions? It's always good to make sure that we have questions and all of that. How would you mark in a 20-minute appointment on this? Great question. So obviously I have used very broad brush strokes on this one. And technically speaking, some of these ones here, like this, Tuesday appointment, a good chunk of these is just a 20-minute appointment, and I have rounded it up for myself to the afternoon not being able to be used. So obviously the afternoon is decently longer than 20 minutes. So there's definitely time in there. But I like to try and be, because I know that I have a type of schedule that is more flexible than other people, I usually try and round up for any of the appointments that I have in here, just because then at least it helps me be a little more realistic, because I am a very ambitious person a lot of the time. Whereas if you're the kind of person who is actually maybe just a little bit more based in reality, first of all, good for you. Could you teach me? Secondly, what you could do is, instead of doing a calendar structure like I've got here with just 3 blocks, you might want to expand that to something that's a little bit more granular. Not too granular. We're not getting out an official schedule calendar here, because that, if you start to overschedule things, especially I find towards the end of half of a quarter, oftentimes you can kind of just set yourself up for disappointment, because you're like, oh, I spent all this time putting this schedule in to perfectly schedule out how I was going to use my time. And then, expectations, reality doesn't line up because other things came up or whatever else. So the way that I have handled those is just putting them in as kind of like a rough block, and kind of ended up maybe even underestimating the amount of available time I have, but I feel like underestimating the amount of time. So, I've said that I have 23 days. I might actually end up with, 27 or something like that because a lot of these appointments are quite small. But that underestimation means that then in setting the number of goals I want to work on for myself, I will probably have more success than I would have if I had been, actually more kind of aligned with the amount of actual time I have. If we kind of flip a piece of paper over here and we have a kind of look at it. So let's just say that we were, super realistic, like really, really accurate to the calendar, all right? That means that I could end up being like, okay, so this is exactly the amount of time that I have available. Love that. Which means that I set a larger number of goals. Let's just say 20 goals, which is maybe not exactly correct, but this is just an example. Okay. But then life got in the way, trying to do things here. Life is just like, no, which means I actually end up achieving maybe 3 goals. And I'm like, oh, okay, sad. But if I was kind of a little maybe less realistic and kind of underestimated the amount of time I would have, underestimate. So I'm like, okay, I'm actually a little lower in terms of the amount of time that will be actually available to me. I will set myself 10 goals, 13 goals. So then when life gets in the way, I actually still end up achieving 3 of them. And I'm like, oh, okay, not as sad. Not as sad. There we go. Slight smirk. Like, still made 30% progress kind of a thing. This is obviously a very kind of hypothetical example here, but that's kind of the way that I see it. If I am a little more inclined to underestimate the available time and then I have bonus time throughout the quarter, it feels like a gift to myself, like, oh wow, I didn't think I was going to get this time. Whereas if I start being really super kind of strict on I only have a 20-minute appointment here, so I still have this much time in this block and yada yada yada, and then life gets in the way, my general procrastination tendencies get in the way or anything like that, I guess this is just going to lead to more kind of feelings of disappointment and also kind of in a way self-beration, because you start to get into this negative space of like, oh, well, you said you had enough time to do all these things and meh, 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 meh. I don't want that for me, but hopefully that kind of helps. Where can I get this template? Great question. So this one here, this is our Change Your Life workbook. You can grab that one from the resource library. We have a link in the description box that you can hit, or you can scan the QR code on screen and that will take you over to that resource library. In particular, it's in the folder called like goal getting or something like that. But that one can hopefully help you out, and then you can work along with us. Or you can just do it on scrap paper. That also works too. But alrighty. Let's see. How about appointments for chronic illness, getting you into energy slumps? Definitely. Yes, that is effectively the part that we take care of in the number 5. So for the time remaining, account for unforeseen circumstances. So the unforeseen circumstances that I was mainly accounting for was that hey, on Fridays, I don't want to do things. So I went and blocked that off. And also I kind of expect myself to have social appointments, but you can also do this for chronic fatigue, chronic illnesses, or even just ones that are random and pop up whenever, hey, roughly around this time of year, because I'm going into winter right now, it's flu season. There might be 2 or 3 less days that I don't get to work on things because I'm sick. Maybe this day and this day are completely taken off because I am ill or something. So my 23 actually becomes 21. It's now negative 21. So that's kind of how I would account for that one, I guess. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more. Hopefully, all of this actually is very much aligned with what your reality is, So in making these predictions, you have accounted for what is for you, something that happens regularly or is expected or anything like that. And of course, kind of like we've said, this is all just a prediction, Right now I'm saying okay, I have roughly 23-ish days worth of time to work on stuff. But I know that I'm the kind of person who I'll probably use this kind of block in here to do some goal work. And maybe I'll do some goal work on a Friday. So that'll be goal work, especially if it's professional goal work. So I can do that during my purple blocks because that's kind of my work time. If I have a goal that's set around connecting with others, then technically this block and 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 this block are all also work time or goal work time, because social connection is a goal of mine. This is the thing. Your goals do not have to be the kind of like traditionally productive things. They don't have to be aligned with one specific life area. They don't have to be things that take, a huge, huge, huge amount of time. They don't have to be things that worked on for like a really long time scale. There's a lot of nuance that goes into this. So this is very much just like a rough approximation for ourselves. But alrighty. Negative 21 days sounds about right. Yeah, pretty much. That's what I kind of woke up feeling like today. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on this week and I have no time to get it done. But tucking that to the side, noting the fact that I don't really have a lot more than 23 days, probably just based on regular commitments. So I'm going to try and not set more than 13 goals because I'm that way inclined. And that's also because I've kind of already started looking at my goals and I know some of them are not going to be things that take a lot of time. They're more so like consistency based goals, ones that I need to work on for a longer period of time. But anyway, so we're into brainstorming. This one technically is a 3-page activity because we have a brainstorming space and a list space where we can write stuff down. So starting on our information space, because that's probably a pretty good idea. I love brainstorming. I love thinking big. I love getting excited about the possibilities that come with goal work. And, if we're thinking about this as the Change Your Life workbook, like what do I want to do to change my life? And when it comes to this idea of change your life, you don't have to do like a full, flip the script, become unrecognizable, like whatever. That if you want to, that's sweet. I'm all for it. Heck yeah, let's be ambitious and do big things. But also, changing your life doesn't have to be a huge drama. It could just be like one thing selected, done with intention, worked on across a 13-week period that makes your life better in some way. For instance, this year I actively started drinking water. And also Tink, because I haven't let you how to drink recently. I'm very sorry about it. I am somebody who will pretty consistently drink 2 liters of water a day. I've struggled with it a little bit in the winter months because I don't get as thirsty in the winter months, but that is something that has definitely changed my life for the better. It wasn't, big and glamorous and super, super exciting, but the body's like, yes, water, please hydrate me. So I said, Tink, gotta have a drink. Good choice, good choice. So as we get into the brainstorming stage, do not think that the stuff that you write on your brainstorm has to be those kind of like big, flashy, exciting Pinterest and social media worthy kind of things. They're just stuff that kind of appeals to you, right? I find it that any goal is easier to work on if you are actually excited about it, whether that be excited about the process, which is very, very good if you're excited about the process, or excited about the outcome. If it's something you're not excited about, either with the process or the outcome, then it's just going to be a lot harder to work on. So when we're going through and brainstorming our goals, do not think that you have to write something down just because society expects it of you. Like if you're totally fine with the fact that you don't drink all that much water, I mean, that's between you and your body. That's not my business. Just because the society says drink more water doesn't mean that it has to go in your goal brainstorm. All right. This is up to you. I'm giving you full free reign to write what kind of sparks your joy. So, in terms of actually doing the brainstorm, though, the reason why I have given you 2 separate spaces is because I find that they work better for different types of my processing, I guess. Sometimes when it comes into like this goal brainstorming stage, we already have a list of things that we already know we want to work on. We just want to write it down in a list. That's great. If you're already coming into this with ideas of things you want to work on, you just jot them down on your list, good to go. For other people, though, they prefer to try and make connections between different ideas or life areas and like unpack things a little differently. That is what this space is for. So I find that this brainstorming space where we're kind of more like mind mapping our goals is a really good place to find links and connections between things. So it's like, okay, well, here's Q3 in a nutshell. What kind of life areas do I want to work on? Like, oh, I want to do things in my home. I want to do things for my mental health. I want to do things related to improving my finances or whatever else. And then unpacking those further, like, okay, sure, you said you want to work on your home, but what do you want to do goal wise related to your home? You're like, oh, well, I really want to do a decluttering project, but I also want to, revamp my pantry storage, but I also want to do blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Well, now my rebel brain says you said I don't have to drink water, so give me all the water. Yeah, that's right. Like, what is it? Reverse psychology? Tiny hacks. I find that if I don't feel like I have to do something, I'm more inclined to just do it. It's the example I always use is when you're just about to unpack the dishwasher and someone says, "Can you unpack the dishwasher?" And I'm like, "Nope, stuff you. Was gonna do it. Not gonna do it now. Bye." Like, same idea with just taking care of myself, but let's see. So, listing out goals, really great for just getting those out of your head and onto paper very quickly, especially if you already kind of know what you want to work on. Not as good for finding connections between things. This one, though, great for finding connections between things, not as easy to kind of just use the list after the fact. So, in terms of my brainstorming, like this one over here, I usually will break it down into life areas. And I am of the belief that not everybody's life areas are all the same. So, on your little info sheet, I've given you some examples of ones that might relate to you, or ones that you might want to work on. Just because it's a life area that is part of your life doesn't mean it's necessarily something you want to work on in quarter 3. That's totally fine too. If you've decided that working career is actually pretty fine, like I don't really need to do anything about that, just cross it out. You don't need to have that on your brainstorm if you don't think you want to set any goals in that space. Maybe you do want to set goals in the financial health space though, because you're like, oh, work and career and the income I'm getting from that is fine, but I have problematic spending tendencies that I would like to address, or I've not been very intentional about building my savings or something like that. Whereas, for some people, maybe they think my finances are actually okay. Like, sure, they could be better, but I don't want to actively, pour effort into thinking about that and working on it. It is all good if you have a life area which isn't perfect, but you don't want to work on right now. That's cool. Like, given the fact that with our last activity, we've found out how much available time we have to dedicate to things, trying to put our fingers in too many pies will usually just lead to a lot of holy pies and not a lot to show for it other than that, right? We want to try and be a little more selective here. But all that to be said, I like to think of the brainstorming stage as just an opportunity to get anything and everything out of my head. It does not have to be the kind of like be all and end all. This does not have to be like, oh, yep, everything that I write down on these 2 pages is definitely going to be a goal for me next quarter. This is just like a fact finding mission. This is just finding out what we could work on, and then we can get a little more selective. So, goals that Jess possibly wants to work on. I want to work on the Know Your Worth workbook, which I bought last year and still haven't actually worked on. So that's a workbook that I have purchased to work through. It's not a workbook I'm making. That I want to continue to strengthen the team with a capital T and make sure that I am offering all of the good perks that they love. The team, all right. We want to continue house hunting. That one is super fun and not demotivating at all. When stuff comes up, you're just like, there's nothing I want. Wah. Let's see. I would like to just like more leisure. And this could be something that I unpack a little more with the brainstorming kind of space. I say brainstorming, the mind mapping space. So if this is, start with the central idea of like, what are your goals? What is the potential here? So one life area that I want to focus on is leisure and fun. It's like, okay, well, unpack that a little further. What do you mean by leisure and fun? What kind of things could you be doing in that space? What kind of goals maybe do you want to set? What feels leisureful and fun for you? So that could be social time. That could be reading. That could be cooking for fun. That could be learning, if that's something that you like to do. But then maybe I also have a separate goal related to personal development, which I'm just going to call PD. I know that's usually professional development, but maybe it's like personal development. So learning can also be part of that, right? Connections. This would be a goal that would possibly serve 2 areas for me. It would serve this idea of, personal development in some way, but then also serve this leisure and fun because I find learning fun. Yeah, especially if you're learning about something you actually kind of care about or have interest in. So that could be something. We kind of mentioned before finances. Maybe you want to improve your financial health. Finances, she can spell. That's not right. That's finances, but whatever. It's close enough. So from that, maybe it's the savings, bringing in a higher savings total. It could be budgeting, actually spending more consciously. So it could be like some kind of like spending issue that you have. Maybe you find that there's a particular category of items that you consistently overspend in and you want to tackle that, maybe set a goal around that. Like, hey, I want to limit my coffee budget to $20 a week instead of 30 or something. I don't know how much a coffee costs. I don't buy coffee, but hopefully you kind of get the idea. Is $20 like one coffee now? Is that how inflation works? Probably. So these is the kind of things that I would write on here is like how I would actually unpack stuff. What you can do then is actually write out what a goal would be here if you wanted to. So like, savings, increase my savings total to X dollars. Budgeting, develop a monthly budgeting practice. Spending issue, spend X amount less per month on whatever kind of thing. So leisure time, definitely a goal that I would like to work on. Other goals that I have that I'm aware of, I would like to continue my physical health goal. So if we kind of put physical health here, we'll just write health because I'm being a little lazy. So that could be things like continuing my water intake. That could be about meal planning. That could be a goal related to meal prep. That has been a previous goal of mine, meal prep. So just unpacking it a little further, finding things that actually are relevant and related to stuff that you want to work on. Just because we have every possible life area here and some spaces to write out the ones that I didn't consider because, there are other ones. I didn't put something down on here related to familiar relationships. I don't have a goal related to that right now. I didn't put one down to significant other specifically because maybe I don't have a goal related to that now. It's all good if it is a category in your life, but it's just one that you don't want to work on. All right, it's like 2.5 coffees. That's good to know because I'm just like, how much is a coffee? I have absolutely no idea. So as part of this, do not hold back, all right? You can write down anything and everything that you maybe possibly want to work on. It does not have to be the final kind of like, this is my official list. These are exactly what my goals are going to be. This is just getting the ideas out so we can then go through and pick out the ones we will actually work on. Are there any questions about the brainstorming stage before we skedoodle on to the next kind of section? Of course, like we have this kind of fact file here for you. So it explains why you would use one or the other and why I personally like to use both a lot of the time. It gives you some life area ideas for yourself. So you can use the ones here. You do not have to use them at all though. As said, for a lot of people, they will come into it with kind of a rough idea of what they might want to work on. And this is just a way to kind of break those down and unpack it a little further. You don't have to use these specific systems, but really we just want to get that one brainstormed, get it done. Brainstorming check, thanks for the help. All goods, happy to be of assistance. Alrighty, so got those ones done. Then we move on over to the next page. We're part selecting the goals. So as I said, just because it was on your brainstorm does not mean you actually have to work on it. I've already done my brainstorming a little earlier. That's why my brainstorm on those pages looks a little light. But once you know which ones you want to possibly work on, it's time to go through and figure out which ones you will actually work on. You do not have to work on everything you wrote down. Maybe you wrote a couple down because you're like, oh, that sounds like kind of nice. But you're thinking about it a little more. You're like, maybe this isn't the time to work on that. Maybe, if we're thinking about a goal of planting a garden, I like this example because it's very kind of like straightforward. There are better times of the year to plant certain plants, all right? And, if you're trying to plant a garden, if one of your goals is to grow a garden space, there are going to be particular times of year where actually getting started with that project just makes more sense. So going through your goals list, the ones that you brainstormed out in either your list form or on your general mind map, we want to go through and pick out the ones we're actually going to work on, okay? Some things to consider here are your available time, okay? If you told yourself like, oh gosh, I really only have enough time to work on like 2 goals, do not write yourself a list of 20 goals. This is one of the very few instances where I'll actually tell you what to do. If you told yourself you only have enough time for 2 goals, do not write a list of 20 goals. But we need to think about the available time. We also need to think about the size of the goals because some goals that we have, they're very small, they're very short term. I'm totally cool for that. Some people may call them projects. I like to think that a project can totally be a goal. If it's important enough to you, it's fine. We want to make sure that we're not overloading ourselves in any way, shape, or form. We don't want to pick a whole bunch of things that are going to pull a lot of time, effort, energy, focus, or anything when we don't have a lot to give. So just go through, think about the goals that you've written down on this brainstorm and pull out a number that makes sense, a number of ones that are a certain size that make sense, ones that you will actually have enough time to work on, needs to make sense for whatever it is that you've decided is your available time across that next quarter period. So some guiding questions we have. Which goal ideas am I most motivated by? If you're already kind of motivated by it, either the process, which is great, or the outcome, that is helpful. Which goal ideas will be the most impactful? I find that an impactful goal, or one that feels like it's going to have genuine payoff, is one that we are going to be more likely to work on as well. All right, which goals are the timeliest? As we said, there are better times of year to plant a garden. And if this is not the time of year for you to plant your garden, then maybe put that one off till later. Just because you're not selecting to work on it this quarter does not mean that you will never work on the thing, all right? Just because this may not be the season to plant the garden does not mean that the garden will never get planted, all right? We can just kind of put that one off to a time of year where the garden planting makes more sense. So, for instance, some goals I have, like if we think about travel goals, because that one's just easy, I would really love to go to Italy one day. This is not the season of life to work on going to Italy. I have taken enough international trips this year and I don't want to take any more. But other goals that I have, one day I would really love to make a properly bound goals journal. I think that would be really cool. Like one that people could they wouldn't print it off and work on it like this, though I do see there being merits of that. They would, be able to have like a hardbound notebook that was a goal planner. That would be really cool. This is not the season of life to be working on that right now. I have other things that are more pressing or more motivating, more timely that I would like to work on. So just because I'm not working on them in this particular quarter doesn't mean that I'm never going to work on them though. It's all good to put pause on those kind of things. So for me, given the fact that my list of things that I've written down wasn't super, super long, Know Your Worth workbook, developing the team with a capital T, house hunting, leisure time, like those kind of things, they could all just be very easily transferred to my list over here. I'm not going to rewrite them because I've already written them in my goal planner, because I have a separate goal planner. It's too hot in Italy. Exactly. Right now is not the time to be in Italy. It's too hot. So yeah, there's going to be a particular time of year that I want to visit where the weather is not going to do me a murder. So once you've selected your goals, I would love to know what kind of things you might be working on. Again, this is all just the planning stages. You're allowed to change your mind. You might get to the end of this workbook and be like, you know what? Actually, I've decided that I picked 7 goals for myself, but there's actually only 3 of them that I really want to work on. Totally cool. All right. Just because you write it down on this list also does not mean that you have to work on it. But would you say a stretching goal and an exercise goal could be combined into one goal? They can if you want them to be, definitely. If your goal is just moving your body, technically stretch is a form of moving your body. So if you wanted to, have, I don't know how often stretching is. Obviously, she's not a medical professional, but take all of this with a grain of salt. Maybe you kind of have a goal surrounding the idea of move my body daily. And some of those daily movements are more of an actual kind of an exercise workout of some description that isn't stretching related. Maybe it's a strength workout or some kind of cardio or whatever. And then on the other days, you do a more dedicated stretching routine. That could be part of the same goal of daily movement goal. So that's one example. But what you could do is have them as separate ones if you feel like they, in your brain, you treat them as different things. So I, in my brain, treat my daily exercise goal and a stretching goal as separate because they kind of have separate outcomes that I'm hoping for in a way. Stretching for me is not a form of move your body. Stretching for me is let's increase flexibility. At least that's how I treat stretching or how I interpret stretching in my mind whole. So for me, I would have them separate. But if it makes more sense in your brain that they are very much related to each other, then you could totally combine them in the same goal. Similar idea. For instance, this quarter and last quarter before that, I have been working on a weight loss goal, right? And so as part of that weight loss goal, I have been aiming to track my food, drink more water, do my exercise or whatnot. Next quarter, I'm planning on actually splitting those out into separate goals because one of the things that I'm aiming for with my goal setting in quarter 3 is to try and make all of my goals input focused wherever possible. What I mean by this is essentially, I kind of see There are a bunch of different ways you can categorize goals, but one of the ways that you can categorize a goal is input versus output. So output is kind of like this is the outcome I want, this is the trophy that I'm aiming for, whereas an input is like this is the list of things that I need to do or want to do. So I'm kind of trying to make mine input focused. So rather than saying I want to, lose weight, here's my little picture of a scale. Yeah, there's a scale. I want to get my water intake. I want to do exercise. I always draw a dumbbell, even though she never does a weight workout. I want to track my food, of some description. So those are going to be my 3 kind of input goals, because I have direct control over, did she drink water? Did she do her exercise? Did she track her food? Kind of a thing. Whereas I do not have a direct control over, did she lose weight? So I'm really trying to make mine input focused. That being said, I still think that there is a definite benefit in an output focused goal, because it is a lot easier to know what the outcome is that you're looking for, or like the outcome you're looking for here is very clear. Whereas the outcome of drinking more water, it's like, oh, does she just want to be more hydrated? I'm like, no, the body can't lose weight if it doesn't have the water to do the processes, kind of a thing. So like, technically speaking, the overarching goal is still that output that I'm hoping for. It's just that I'm going to focus on the inputs that I need to do, or like the actions that I need to take. So I'm kind of aiming to change my focus on this for quarter 3, even though for the past however many quarters I have been focused on that output. I feel like that was a side tangent. Hopefully it makes sense. Yeah, so there are a couple different ways that I like to think about goals. I like to think about goals and like grouping them in terms of the like time scale. I like to group them in terms of whether they're an input or an output. So input versus output. I like to group them based on whether they are negative or positive goals. So it's like, are you adding something or are you taking it away? And then a goal in terms of like familiarity also is like, okay, is it like something completely brand new? Are you trying to better something or improve something? Or are you just trying to like maintain something? These are not the actual letters that I use for these things, but that's kind of how I like to break my goals up into different kind of sections, or like categorize them so that then I can see what would actually be helpful for that particular goal type. For instance, an output goal, like we said, is great because you know what it is your target is. You have a very clear picture of the target. Whereas an input goal, you have a very clear picture of what needs to be done, but you don't necessarily have as clear a picture of the target. The nice part about an input goal is that it feels really within your control, whereas an output goal might feel a little bit more outside of your control because by definition it kind of is. It means that when you're doing your planning for an output goal, you need to get really granular about, okay, these are the tasks that have to be done. Whereas when you're planning an input goal, you need to get very clear about the vision of what is it that I'm actually hoping to achieve here, and do those things help me work towards that? Again, we are on a tangent here, but hopefully it's interesting. This is stuff that we talked about in Epic Goals, which is just like the different categorizations of goals and the kind of benefits and limitations of each goal type. Because I do not see goals as like having to adhere to like one very specific standard. I know for some people, like they love a SMART goal. I do not love a SMART goal. Oftentimes I find a SMART goal to be something that just doesn't feel inspiring, or something that you can feel really super connected to. A lot of the time it just starts to become quite clinical. Whereas something like, this output-based goal we're talking about, that can be something you feel very connected to. It's very clear, like it's concisely worded, it's memorable. A goal of lose weight, even though lose weight is not directly within our control, like, I said, it's that output kind of goal. It is something that is a lot easier to remember and like clearly communicate both to yourself and to others and such. Anyway, back to this. So also, if you guys had a question that I missed, I apologize. I obviously got on my soapbox there. I'll get off my soapbox before I twist an ankle or something. But maybe plan for the garden rather than plant the garden. Exactly. Just because we're working on these things for a quarter, because we're doing quarterly planning here or whatnot, doesn't mean that you have to get an entire goal finished. So maybe, selecting your goal, you can plan the garden out so that when the right season comes, the planting can happen. Maybe instead of tackling the entire, like, oh, I'm going to lose all of my weight in this one quarter, maybe I'm just trying to establish a proper exercise routine. Maybe instead of writing the full book, I'm going to, outline the kind of like plot beats that I want or whatever. She hasn't written a book. She doesn't know how it would work, but hopefully that kind of makes sense. Just so you know, I wrote team emails several times a day now in my head. I love that. I'm glad that that's like part of your mental processing now, Tink, because it's definitely part of mine. I was talking with Vogel the other day. For anybody who's like, who? That's my partner Vogel. I was telling him about the team membership, and I kept on going, oh, the team with a capital T. And he's like, you said that yesterday, and I thought it was just you being funny, but now it's like, you say it every time. What's that? I'm like, oh, it's, to differentiate between the membership versus the wider community kind of things. Like, okay, that makes sense. But once you have selected your goals, remembering that you do not actually have to commit to all of the ones you write down here. This can still just be part of the process of dwindling down the list or, figuring out exactly what you want to work on. Then it's time to plan them. All right. As it says, setting goals is good. Planning goals is even better, right? A planned goal is much more likely to get done, which we appreciate. Alrighty, let's have a look. Now, in your workbook, you have one goal action plan. You can always just print this page off however many times you want. It's very, very simple. It's obviously just what is the goal? What are you going to do to work on it? Typically, when I'm planning a goal for reals, not for fakes, I usually get a little more granular. I would say like, okay, here's the goal. Here's the ideal outcome. Here are my metrics of success, or like how I will know I'm making progress and all of that. I will have the why behind a goal, all of these kind of things. This workbook was designed to be, I guess in a way, when it comes to the planning stages, less deep, more like a kind of quick and dirty kind of thing. That does not mean that it is not helpful. That does not mean it is not a powerful process. But if you want to go a little bit deeper with this, you can start to think about the reasoning, the why, the ideal outcome and such, which can really add to that kind of feeling of connectedness to your goal. But I'm just going to pick one of my goals because I've only got one here. One of the goals that I'm hoping to work on, and I'm going to make that we'll do that the Know Your Worth workbook, right? Because you can think about this as just like a learning project. So you could kind of treat what I'm doing here as like, oh, I bought a course and I'd actually like to go through and do the course materials. I have a program of study that I would like to undertake. I set up a personal curriculum. Like this is all kind of the same type of thing. So this would be goal of complete and implement. What is it? I'm going to say like the Know Your Worth workbook, but it's going to be the something from the Know Your Worth workbook. Yep. The Know Your Worth workbook. So when I think about the idea of writing a goal out, typically I have a goal title, which is just the very kind of like the shorthand of referring to it. So the way that I would just refer to this one is in the shorthand would just be, oh, it's the Know Your Worth workbook, or even just Know Your Worth. Whereas the actual goal itself is to complete and implement the findings that I have from that, or the takeaway points. As someone who wrote a novel, I get what you're talking about. I'm glad. I'm glad that it makes sense. Oh, yay, new member. And I know that we had another new member before, which was very exciting. So welcome to the team with a capital T. We are very excited to have you with us. Also, as we're going through, we're talking about goals and goal setting and all of this kind of a thing. The team with a capital T is now going to have a community space that is dedicated towards goal setting, goal getting and such, and kind of like building that community and accountability that can be really helpful with goals. So if you would like to join up at any tier, then we would love to have you. You can either hit the join button, I think beside my name, if that's if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, then hey, subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, you can jump over to just check out what our membership perks are to see if it would be the right fit for you. Because obviously, one of the perks is the community surrounding goal work, goal getting, all of that kind of a thing. But we also have, exclusive video content. We have the exclusive live streams that we marked in for every Monday my time. So those kind of things are also part of the perk set. So if that's kind of your vibe, if you want more good stuff, then we would love to have you with us. You can check out the perk list either from that link or the QR code or whatnot. But alrighty, so your reply absolutely needs to be your text tone. I know, right? Do you separate your goals and projects? Good question. So I do and I don't. So when I write my projects down, like in my goal plan, like my goal planner rather, like let's just pretend that this is my goal planner page, I will usually write them in two separate lists. I'll be like, oh yeah, here are my goals, here are my projects, and I'll da 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 da. Mainly because when it comes to planning them out, they have slightly different sections. The goals will have like, what is the goal? What is the ideal outcome? What is the why? What are the metrics of success? And then what are the action steps? AS, action steps. Whereas a project, I will have the project like elaborated on, and then the action steps. I usually get kind of lazy with it. The project definitely could benefit from having an ideal outcome, but I don't usually need to get as granular with it because for me, a project is usually worked on a shorter time scale. That's kind of like part of the way that I differentiate is like goals can be these like, long-term kind of things, whereas a project could be a short-term kind of thing. Because it's usually something that I expect to complete within a week or maybe a month or a cycle or across the quarter or whatnot, I don't feel as much of a need to get into the why of it. Whereas a goal, which can oftentimes be a long term thing, having that compelling why is something that helps me come back to so that then I don't have to rely on motivation so much, because relying on motivation is a really surefire way to lead to disappointment because motivation is fickle, motivation wanes. Whereas if I have a compelling reason why I'm working on something, I can kind of come back to that reasoning to remotivate me, keep me going, kind of a thing. And I usually don't need that for projects quite so much. Projects are also like they have a very clear outcome that I'm hoping for, whereas a goal might be a little bit fuzzier. I don't have like a perfect kind of like split in my mind as to what would count as a goal versus a project, because oftentimes I kind of consider all of my projects to be mini goals. So for some people, the distinction is a lot more kind of black and white, but for me, it's very much got a decent area of gray. Will we be using the Epic system in the new Discord? The new Discord has been set up with the Epic system in mind, and it has like all of the resources that were through the Epic Goals Club have been brought over into the team membership. So in that respect, yes, but it's also kind of adjusted so that it works nicer for the new space that we're in. If that, I know that maybe doesn't necessarily make sense. It's mainly because I'm also still building your new community space. That one's going to be finished by hopefully the end of this week, maybe the start of next week, so that we can move into it for quarter 3, which I'm very excited about. But we're thinking about the action steps for this one because we're trying to keep this goal plan kind of chill, kind of streamlined. So things that we need to do here. When I'm thinking about my action steps, I like to think about like, what are the one-off things? What are the things I only have to do once? What are the things that I have to do repeatedly or maybe a couple of times? What are the things that I have to do daily? I find that organizing my thinking in terms of the frequency of tasks that need to be done can be a very helpful way to figure these things out. Now, technically speaking, complete and implement the Know Your Worth workbook could be seen as two separate goals or projects. They could be the project of completing the workbook and then the goal of long-term implementing the workbook. I'm only planning on actively working on this one as is written for quarter 3 because hopefully by the end of quarter 3, I will have I'll have completed the workbook, I'll have taken my learnings and findings and kind of built that into my system. That's the kind of ideal outcome I have for myself here, or what I would like for myself. So in thinking about the action steps for this, I need to review workbook for the sections inside. Like I want to kind of go through and see what it's all about in a very kind of broad general sense. This would be like the equivalent of looking over your syllabus or something if you were taking a course. I then want to draft a schedule for working on it. Typically speaking, when I have to make something for a goal or project, I will put down making a draft as one of the action steps, mainly because it feels softer and easier. If I say like make a schedule, then it is something that feels a lot bigger, a lot more daunting in my head. kind of talks about it over here in terms of making action steps and the two things to check. And I know it sounds silly, but you need to check that it is an action and that it is a step. All right. Action, it's something that you can actually do. Usually it starts with a doing word. So review, that is something I can do. Draft, that is something I can do. All right. If I just wrote down schedule for working on it, a schedule, like schedule can be a verb, but used in that context, it is not a verb. It is not a doing word. Another thing to note though, is it a step? All right. We want it to feel easy. We want it to feel small. We want it to feel granular. Now, notably, there is a balancing act between making things so small that you have a long, huge list of things to do versus making them slightly bigger and having a less large list of things to do. You know yourself better than I know you. If you're the kind of person who gets super, super overwhelmed by a really, really long list, then maybe you don't want to write them out quite as granularly. Or if you're the kind of person who really does benefit from things being really small and really granular, but you're okay with a long, long list, that's cool. Write them out super, super tiny and just be like, bam, 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 checking all of these teeny tiny things off. If you're the kind of person who benefits from having it small, but also gets overwhelmed by having a really, really long list, don't write them all down. just write down like the next 2 or 3 small things that you need to get done, all right? You do not need to have a perfect plan to take action. You do not need to have every single step written out in full, perfectly sequenced so that you can follow this through from start to finish without ever writing anything else down on this list. If that's the kind of thing that's going to overwhelm you, it will just lead to paralysis more than actual progress. And we want you to make progress, right? So in knowing yourself better than I know you, if you are the kind of person who needs to write it down granularly, but you cannot deal with having too long of a list, just write the next 3 steps down, or even just write the next 1 step down. Then once you've done that step, you can come back, you can write the next step, all right? It is more important to me that you are working in such a way that gets you to actually make the progress that you're hoping for, rather than adhering to somebody else's idea of like what your plan should look like, okay? For some people, it's going to be great if you have every single step written out. You're like, cool, this is my full roadmap. I just need to follow the roadmap and I'm going to be sweet. And for those people, it is really comforting to have everything written out. I am like so happy for those people. That is not for everybody though, right? You are your own person. You are your own kind of goal getter. So all that aside, again, she stepped up on her soapbox. She'll get off it now. Okay, we're continuing here. My goal action plan. So I need to review the sections inside the workbook so I know what to expect. I need to draft a schedule for working on it. And then I need to finalize the schedule. I'm going to write this really messy because I'm going to transfer this somewhere else. It's a little bit neater. You do not need your perfect English here. You do not need your perfect handwriting. And then once you've finalized your schedule, you can like make quote, quote, official schedule reference. So that could be in either Notion or Outlook, depending on where I want to schedule this stuff. If I actually want to set aside specific times to work on it, then maybe Outlook would be good. You know, go and block in times to work on it on my calendar. As you're writing things down on your action steps list, you also do not have to write them in order. I find that sometimes it'll be really easy to let one thought lead to another. Like, okay, I have to do this. And then the next logical step is I have to do this. And then the next logical step is I have to do this. That can be really great. But sometimes out of nowhere, another thought will come in and I'll be like, oh yeah, I totally need to do that at some point. Just write it down. It's cool. We can sequence this later. This doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, we are actually going to sequence it later because we have scheduling action steps on the very next activity page. Huzzah. So other things that need to be done. I'm just going to write myself a general kind of list. I'm going to tilt it because I don't, usually when I'm writing in my notebook, I don't write this way. I write like this. So align your page to a way that feels natural for you. We are going to have to like actually work on it. So work on the workbook. And that's going to be something that is a repeated action. So we're going to put an R here for repeated. It's not going to just be like do it once and now it's done. It's going to be happening multiple times. What else? We are going to have to write notes about my learnings. We're going to have to brainstorm applications of learnings, because it's all good and well to learn things, but it's even better if we actually do something with what we learned. So those ones are probably going to be repeated actions as well, because it's like if we think about it in a chapter-wise kind of sense, oh, okay, I finished the chapter. Let's write my notes. And now I need to brainstorm how I want to use the stuff from those notes. Yada, 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 yada. You're in your journal right now. I notice my journal is ever so slightly tilted up as well. Yeah, I just find that tink, having it on a slight angle is just more comfortable for my hand, I think. Alrighty, I think this is a good point. I need every single step, but I also get overwhelmed by the amount of steps. I find myself being a little similar sometimes. So this is also in part why I keep a separate goal planner, because I can write out every single step that I need to do and I can sequence it in my goal planner. But looking at that on a day-to-day basis is just too much. So instead, I will use my everyday planner and the priorities list that I have in there just for the week to pull out, okay, just this week, what needs to get done? And you could probably get more granular and be like, okay, well, just this day, what needs to get done? That's something in particular that I've built into the new team space for the team with a capital T, which is this little spot called I think it's called daily intentions. So we can jump in there each day and be like, okay, guys, this is like the one tiny thing or maybe a big thing that I'm going to do to work on my goals today. And you can just like, put it there as like a declaration of it. This is what I'm getting done today. And then jump back in at the end of the day and let us know how you went. Hopefully got it done. Even if it's only a little bit of progress, it still totally counts. You do that too. I write everything and then split it up into different sections so that it isn't all in one place and it doesn't feel overwhelming. Yeah. Mind hacks. Other things that need to get done for this, I need to set up a chapter tracker, and I need to, what do we say? So there was the official schedule, which is just like a kind of schedule, and then I'm going to have to, set aside time to work on, again, you don't need to have the perfect handwriting here, on it. And that's going to be a repeated task as well. That's something that I'll need to do on a repeated basis. The way that I'm kind of thinking about this at the moment, because it is a workbook that has 12 chapters, and there is, 13 weeks in a quarter, which is technically 12 plus reset week. Quick math. I figured that I could do one chapter per week. That was kind of the rough schedule I wanted to give myself, and I thought that that could be a good way to do it. I just don't know how much time. I probably need to put that as like approximate time. It says approx, it means approximate time to complete each chapter. Because if I have one chapter that's really long and it's in week, I don't know, 3 or something, if the first chapter is like this big and the second chapter is this big and then the third chapter is this big and then the fourth chapter is this big or something, maybe giving myself an approximate amount of time needed to work on each chapter to make sure that it is suitable for the week in question. Because if I go back to my time schedule that we had from before, which sure, it was just an initial activity, but it is something we can use. Maybe it's the kind of thing of, oh yeah, in week 3 I could possibly fit it in here roughly, maybe, if it was a really big chapter. Maybe I'll only need like one part of the afternoon, but maybe we get to a week where the chapter is actually like massive, like huge, we'll just put it like that big or something. I actually need to kind of get my tiny scissors out, which these are scissors, don't be fooled, and cut across here and be like, okay, well, I'll do, what was that, week 5, 1 2 3 4 5, maybe I do part of it here and part of it there or something like that. This is not an official schedule, but you can use it. You can use this structure as an official schedule if you want to. Anyways, putting that back. Alrighty, you write down just the next 5 tiny tasks, and once you finish those, I write the next 5. Yeah, it's a good way to do it. And I think that idea of a kind of, you don't use the complete list, you just use a small subsection, and then as you need to add tasks, you add them to kind of stop the overwhelm, can be helpful. But in going through, in thinking about your action steps, all right, we have a set of brainstorming action step questions to help you out with this process. So, what action steps do I already know are needed for the goal? What is the first thing I need to do for the goal? What are the daily, weekly, monthly things that I need to do? Is there any research that I need to do? A lot of goals will have a research stage. So, if we're thinking about planting that garden, it's like, okay, well, what kind of soil do I actually have? That's a type of research. I need to go find that out. What kind of plants actually thrive nicely in my area or in my climate? If that's something you don't really know, that's something to find out. Those kind of things, sometimes there are going to be multiple things we have to research for a goal. This one in particular, I don't have a lot of research to do, except for the fact that I guess, going through and reviewing this workbook and the sections inside it, that's technically a fact-finding mission. It's a type of research. It's figuring out what's actually in the workbook, what to expect, how big are those chapters, so that then I can actually figure out roughly how much time I'm going to need for them. It's a type of research. Are there any resources that I need to require? I already have the workbook, so I don't need to get it. But if it was something I was interested in doing and I didn't have it, I need to get that. So that could be something to account for. Do I know anyone who I can ask for advice on that has achieved a similar goal? One of the things that I'm building into the new community space for the team is a goal forum. So if people want to talk about a very particular type of goal, they have a set space for that. In particular, I set it up that way because I know that there are certain types of goals that people just they don't want to really be exposed to, they don't really want to talk about. So, for maybe some people, health and fitness or something is not something that they're interested in, or it's a topic they prefer to avoid, we're going to have a separate space where people can just talk about that kind of stuff if they want to. Similar idea, if people are all kind of trying to, I don't know, publish a book or whatever, then we could have a separate spot. I nearly forgot that. Whoopah. No, I just did real quiet. Whoopah. But so that's nice. Yeah, goal forum, you're speaking my language. I'm glad you're excited. I'm really excited. And I just think it'll be really nice to have that kind of little community hub for us, so that we're all kind of working along, getting things done together and cheering each other on. That is the vibe. But anywho, these are kind of questions that you can use as you start to brainstorm your action steps. As we've talked about, you do not need to have a 100% completed list here. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to exist, right? That's the most important part. But the next thing we need to do, now as we know what it is in theory that we're going to be doing as part of this, we need to figure out when things are going to happen. All right, so a daily action plan for those things that have to happen on a daily basis, a weekly action plan for those things that have to happen on a weekly basis. So these ones in particular are for those tasks that you've said are repeatable tasks, those ones that will happen time and time again. But we also have, flipping over, the quarterly action plan. So these are the tasks that you would be putting in to say oh yeah, I need to do, this every 2 weeks per. I need to do this only on the last, I don't know, week of each month or something, and plop those ones in. So these are the schedules that we have. We'll just shove them all across here. So we have a daily action plan for any of those tasks that need to be done on a repeated basis, and roughly when are you going to be doing them, because if you go in with a plan of when you'll be doing the thing, you're much more likely to get the thing done. All right, so for instance, if we think about my physical health, weight loss goal or whatever, one of the repeated daily actions that I am doing as part of that is exercise. So it's okay, if I'm going to make exercise a daily thing, when in the day does it make the most sense to do that? Accounting for the fact that there are other things that happen on a daily basis. So for some people, doing it in the morning first thing makes sense. That is when they have availability. Maybe they can get up a half hour early, get it done or whatever, and then get on with the rest of their day, and that's cool. For other people, if we're just thinking about that exercise as an example, for some people, the idea of waking up first thing in the morning and doing exercise is the most unappealing way to start the day, and they're just not going to do it. They're just not going to get out of bed. They'll, the alarm will go off and they'll be like, haha, not today, Satan, snooze, and then that won't happen, right? So maybe for them, doing it in the afternoon to combat an energy slump or something, that could be really helpful. That is how I treat it. For right now, my exercise is an energy slump combater, so I put it in the afternoon to try and get through that little energy slump that I have for myself. Is this going to be on Discord? Yes. And for anybody who hasn't used Discord or finds Discord daunting, we're also going to put together an introductory video to kind of get people familiar and accustomed to how it works and such. So it's kind of like, hey, this is where all of our spaces are. This is how you access them and whatever else. I was also thinking, this is an aside, but thinking of doing a kind of like a live stream introduction kind of a thing to be able to jump into the Discord and like how we actually use it and whatnot, so that then when people have any questions, I could effectively answer them in real time. So for instance, like if we just where is it? We just jump over here just for a second. We'll just jump over into the server help desk for now. So because we have the ability to share a screen on here, you know, I could share to be like, hey, okay, this is one of our server spaces. This is the like wider community server that's like free access for everybody. Anybody can jump in here and chat with us or whatever. So I would go through and be like, hey, so this is the kind of stuff we share in this space, and this is the journal forum, and like this is how you use it and whatever. Obviously, this one here is not the team with a capital T space, but this is a space that we are using as well, and this is kind of like how it would go down in terms of doing that live stream for people. But anywho, so stop sharing that one. Back to this. There was a question of how do I find you on Discord? So we do have as I said, a community Discord server that is open for everybody. And if you would like to join up to that one, I'm sure I can find you a link to it somewhere. Join our community. There you go. I don't have a hittable link in the description box, but I'll put one down for you. But if you want to join the wider Discord community, which is mainly a journaling community, that one is mainly focused on, you know, journal layouts, planning, those kind of things. That's open to everybody. Anybody can join. If you're, you know, new to Discord, totally cool. The people over there are very, very welcoming. They're very good like that. So jump over, come and see us. Yeah, Inception. I was there and here I am. I know, right? I saw your name pop up and I was just like, oh, I wonder if you're here too. But it's a good place to be. It's a good little corner for us, and people just, you know, sharing ideas and whatnot from their journals and such. So that space is free for everybody to join. More than welcome to come over and hang out with us. But we're going to have a separate server that is a little bit more kind of like specifically goal oriented, just for the team with a capital T. And we will be announcing that one soon because I'm still building it for you. But alrighty. Separate question. How many members are there in the team at the moment? Oh, a few hundred. I wouldn't be able to tell you the exact number, and I also cannot remember how many is at each tier, but over 500 at the moment. Let's see. So, scheduling action steps. When you're doing this part in particular, what I personally try to remember is that, Jessica, you are not the kind of person who only works on one goal. So I would always aim to do my goal plans, these ones here, for each of my goals first, so that then I can kind of combine all of the information that I have for all of the steps that I need to do into this. Mainly so I can see if I am overloading myself, because as somebody who does like to, you know, bite off more than she can chew, and then in theory chew it, sometimes chewing it is difficult because you have actually just bitten off way too much. So I like to have this as a kind of overview of what I'm hoping to do, what I'm hoping to work on to accomplish my goals as a whole for all of them, so that then I can see if I'm being unrealistic. So like we kind of said, for the goal of the Know Your Worth workbook and working on that, there are obviously some one-off things, like I need to review the chapters. That'll probably come up the front here. So review chapters, so the chapter length or something like that. I also needed to, you know, go through and make a schedule for myself. So maybe that drafting of the schedule is something I do in the first week. Schedule. And the main reason that I'm putting those in week 1 is because, as said, this is a 12 chapter workbook. I want to work on it in those 12 weeks, those first 12 weeks. And then week 13 is reset week. Just write down reset week for myself off to the side here. Reset week. I know you can only half see that, but it's there. That elephant coming along, Jess. I know, right? Slowly but surely, I am eating it. For anybody who's wondering, I'm not actually eating an elephant. That is just a turn of phrase. But cyclic planning, then quarterly planning helped you more than quarterly planning alone. Oh, I'm so glad that it was helpful for you, though. I love cyclic planning. For anybody who does cyclic planning, obviously cycles are done on a 4-week period. So that is one cycle. Then we have the next cycle. Then we have another cycle, another one. We're gonna need another pen color, another cycle. And then we have reset week, which, this is only if you do cyclic planning, but just if you want to map those in there, you can also map that as well. And sometimes people will have things that they want to do across a cycle. So maybe having a little grid set up for yourself to say, like, on a cyclic basis, this is what I would like to do. But like we said, there are some tasks that need to be done repeatedly. Some of them will have a repetition of like, oh, I have to do this, once a week. I have to do this once a day. I have to do this once every 2 weeks or something. So you just pick the appropriate action plan to help you put that thing in. So for any of my weekly repetitions, the ones that have to be done at least once a week, that would go on the weekly action plan because I want to specify, oh yeah, I'm going to aim, or my target is to do that on this day of the week. So maybe I make it that Monday is my know your worth work. Like that's when I actually go through it. And maybe in particular, I do that in the evening. You don't have to treat it as a time ladder, but you could treat this as a time ladder if you wanted to say, oh yeah, I'm going to do the know your worth workbook at the end of the day. And the reason that I say Monday is because that's a day that Vogel has gaming with his friends, so he won't bother me. So that totally counts. So that could be something that I plan in there. If we're thinking about a goal that you have that requires daily actions, when during the day are you going to do it? All right. Is it going to be like a first thing in the morning task? Maybe you've got a goal around actually remembering to take your medication, Jessica. And so maybe one of the things you need to do in the afternoon is actually take your lunchtime medication because that's not a routine you've established for yourself. So you put that in here. Even though these are separated out into these separate bands or whatnot, it's mainly just for the ease of writing in here, but you can also use it for different spans of time if you want to. So for instance, if we take a ruler here, we just rule down the center of this one. You don't have to, this is just an example. But in each of your weekly boxes, you can probably maybe barely see it on camera, but there are some very faint lines here. So you have 4 rows, which I've now cut in half. So I have 8 segments. So if I said like, okay, there's a particular task that I want to do in week 3, and I know I want to do it on Thursday, then I could kind of treat these like the days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then at any time, like it could happen at any point in the week. Maybe there is a particular task that I'm like, okay, on Thursday of this week specifically, I want to do this particular task. And then you can start to map out like, will I actually have enough time to do all of these things? It's all good and well to write yourself a list of however many things that you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get these 20 things done in week 4, but you know that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of week 4 are actually, not accessible for doing tasks. That would just be silly. Then are you actually going to get your 20 tasks done? Thank y'all for reminding me to take your calcium pill. You're so welcome. I'm so happy to help out in any way that I can. Yeah, my autism likes cyclic planning so much more. I remember reading a book in primary school where some evil teacher was doing something that had to be done on the 13th week of the 13th month. Yeah. Just made so much more sense. I love this. Like, it's just nice having... I like being able to see time in this way. This way helps me. Cyclic planning really helps me with my visualization of time and the appreciation of the passage of it. But so once you have gone through your goal plan and you have mapped out to say like, okay, this task is getting done here, this task is getting done here, or whatever else, it really just helps you make sure that you're sequencing things in a way that does not overload you, all right? Doesn't kind of, try and cram way too much on one week when realistically you can't actually get all that done. It also kind of gives you like a roadmap to follow. Remember, all of this is planning though. It doesn't actually have to be the be all and end all. Once you've done it for one goal, you need to do it for any other goals you have as well, right? Some people prefer to start by planning out their most important goal. They'll do their goal action plan for the thing that they are like most excited about, most eager to make progress on. They're like, this is the one that I really want to see big change for, or like big improvements, big progress for in this quarter. They'll do that one first. They'll map it all out. Mainly because if it is your big focus, if it is the one that you want to make the most progress on, you want to kind of place them like they're big rocks. It's like the river moves around these things. The passage of time and the flow of my other tasks is going to move around this stuff because this is the stuff that matters to me. Then they will come back in and do the same kind of process for goals that are slightly less important. They'll redo this kind of like, here's the goal I have, here are the action steps that I want to do for like my second most important goal, or one that's like slightly less important or whatever. And then they will place those. Mainly so that then on those weeks that there is a potential for getting overloaded, there's a possibility that you could end up with a huge laundry list of tasks, at least the ones that are most important are the ones that got added first. So you're like, okay, well, those ones, if anything happens, those ones are happening. If, I cannot get to everything, these are the ones I start with. By having the actual kind of like tasks written down first, it means that they are more likely to get done. Also, I find that the nice part about doing this on paper rather than digitally is that if you're doing it digitally, you can just add more lines, which in a way seems kind of like a good thing. You're like, oh, I can add as much space as I want. But I think that having the physical limitation of only a set amount of space in each of these boxes is a very good reminder that your time is also limited in some way. Might not be as limited as other people's. It might not be like, as limited on one week versus another or whatever. But if you can just add infinite lines to any of these boxes, then you can kind of run this risk of just piling on too much that is actually going to be possible for the time you have available for yourself. Hopefully that makes sense. Are there any questions? All right. So obviously I've only put in a couple of things here. There are definitely other things that I'm working on. For instance, in this new house hunting kind of thing, like if we go and have a look at the weekly plan in particular, because I can definitely add things to this weekly plan. So Tuesday is when I go and look at house listings. And then I also look at them again on Wednesday because I don't trust that they got them up on time. So house listings. If I have any open homes to go to, I go on a Sunday. Open homes. That's only if there are any that I actually want to look at. In Australia, it's currently 8:45 a.m. Oh, nice. Well, in part of Australia it is at least. Yeah, it's 10:47 here, a.m. on Thursday. I'm like, she knows what day of the week it is. Other things that happen, if we're thinking about social connection as a goal, I have the midweek mafia that happens every Wednesday. If I continue to have, connection with my partner as a goal, then on Thursday we have date night. Notably, I am not writing these down in the sequence that they happen because date night's usually the last thing that happens. Let's say, what is your must-have absolutely not on the house hunting list? Oh, what a great question. I have a list. It is a decent list. We kind of have like a checklist that I've turned into a Notion template for myself. So every time we go to a new house open home, I can just regenerate the house hunting checklist and go through and like check things off as we walk around the house. It just makes it so much easier to remember things. We've got things like the number of rooms. We've got things like the type of like cooktop they have in the kitchen. We've got things like, some of them are just preferences and some of them are must haves. So my absolutely not. I think that one of the things that we are definitely looking for is some kind of like butler's pantry or scullery, because we both really enjoy cooking. We enjoy our kitchen gadgets and all of that kind of thing. Our current kitchen does not have the bench space capacity to have those things out, and that means that we don't use them as much, and that is a bummer. So we would like to have a kitchen that has more space available for those kind of things, and as part of that we would like to be able to just close the door and kind of keep it hidden from guests. So a butler's pantry or a scullery, that's one of the big ticket things that we're looking for. But yeah, there is a lot of stuff on the checklist, so literally I will just regenerate the checklist, walk around any kind of open home we're in and be like, oh yep, it's got that, oh, doesn't have that kind of a thing, so that then when we go and do a little digest in the car or on the way home or whatever, we can say like, oh, okay, yeah, did you check for XYZ? Yes, I did. And on the checklist, I said, no, they didn't have that thing. Have y'all considered building your own home? That is something we have very, very recently started looking into. Mainly because a lot of the stuff we're looking for does actually, there are homes around that have that. It's just that they don't have all of the things that we want. They have the majority of the things we want. So that's not to say that the houses that we have in our area or the places we're looking don't have these features. It's just we haven't found the one that has all of the features. But let's see, other things that I have been doing. I'm kind of doing this mainly based on what's happening this week, or this quarter, because it's a little bit easier to think about because I haven't gone and fully unpacked all of my goals yet. This is really just kind of more of a show and tell for the process that I will be using for it. But for instance, I have meds in the morning, I now have meds in the afternoon, and I have meds in the evening. So if you had a goal around actually being consistent with your medication, maybe you could list out like, okay, well, these are the ones that I'm taking at these points. So that's something I have to remember to do in those periods of time. I do my exercise in the afternoon because I try and use it to combat my energy slump. In the evening, I'm trying to get to bed by, X PM, whatever time it is, because one of the things that I'm aiming for is a certain amount of sleep, and to kind of like, encourage good routines around my sleep and like sleep hygiene and all of that kind of thing. I have to do it at certain points. One of the goals that I've had for this quarter has been personal care tasks. So that has been things like doing my skincare in the morning and in the evening. So skincare, for some people, like, oh, is doing skincare really goal worthy? For me, it definitely was. I didn't have a skincare routine, and through working on a goal of developing a skincare routine across a quarter, I now actually have a skincare routine. Just because your goal might seem a little silly to somebody else doesn't mean it can't be your goal. Like we talked about, you have full permission to work on the things that are actually going to be impactful for you. That is much more important to me than you kind of subscribing to this idea of, oh, well, society says that like I should work on this or I have to work on blah, 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 blah. So, alrighty, question. Yeah, here you can work with a builder to make changes. Yeah, you can do that here. But it's just can get costly depending on what you want to do and like whether they're the kind of people who only work from a set kind of type of plan or whatever. But do you have a system in place to help you prioritize your focus goals? Like, I guess softly, but really, I kind of treat most of my goals. If we're thinking about like the goals that I have selected to work on in a quarter, there are going to be some that I subconsciously think are more important, but usually the ones that I subconsciously think are more important are also the ones that are like more challenging or just less fun to work on. So I do often let them take a back seat in favor of other things. They are also typically the ones that are long-term goals, which means that I get into this mindset all too often of being like, oh, I can work on that at any time, which does mean sometimes they end up a little underserved. I was kind of tempted to, for at least one quarter, not quarter three, but a quarter, maybe quarter four, trial out the idea of just working on like one or two goals. I'm the kind of person who usually likes to have quite a list because I like that idea of flexibility and having a lot of things to work on. And especially because I share my goal work through the Change Your Life vlog series, it's nice to have multiple things to show you guys, I guess. So it's nice to kind of work on a decent chunk of things. So it's like, hey, here's progress that I'm making across XYZ of an area. I feel like Rebel Brain in particular would probably kick in if I tried to. This is all just a theory though. I think Rebel Brain would kick in if I only had 3 or 4, 2 goals or whatnot. But it could also mean that you make better progress on just that smaller subset of things. So technically, yeah, I kind of have a system for helping me prioritize my focus goals, but it is underutilized and very soft. It's not a kind of rigid process or system. It'd probably be something that I could benefit from looking into more. But I think that if you find that the goals that you are, or like the ones that feel like they are the most important to you, for either because you feel like they are the ones that are going to have the most payoff or the ones that you just have the biggest want to get them accomplished, narrowing focus and really just kind of trying to only work on those things or only work on those plus a very small amount of others could mean that you make more progress on them. But so scheduling actions across the week, shove it into all of the little different gaps and such to make sure that you're not overloading yourself. Because if you tell yourself, like, oh, okay, all of these goals require a morning action, but my morning time is really limited, or I find myself not very focused in the morning, or, it's just a hectic mess of a time, maybe you need to adjust how you structure that for yourself. Similar idea, if you find that, oh, all of these tasks require me, or like all these goals require a task done in the afternoon, but in my afternoons, I am at my lowest energy. I am the least likely to get things done in a timely manner. I always make mistakes or something because I'm feeling lethargic. Can I schedule them for somewhere else? Can I then go and divert those to other periods of time, make some space for them in areas that, or time periods that they would be better served or whatnot. That is kind of the process that we're using when we're plopping things into different spots on these schedules. Similar idea with the weekly action plan. If you go and say, like, okay, I'm going to do all of these things on a Friday afternoon, but you know that Friday afternoon you is just like, nah, bro, it's not going to happen, then maybe we need to reevaluate. Yeah. You failed on your weight goal this quarter too, so I wanted to see what you recommend to prioritize your goals. Good question. I think that, yeah, in terms of like a weight loss goal, because it is a very multifaceted goal, the thing that I am doing to adjust that is going from the focus of the output, or like the weight loss, to more of a focus on the input. So these are the actions that I'm going to do, mainly because, one, they feel more within my control because they're things that I can actually like action and do. Two, they're more granular. They're like less amorphous. They're more specific than just a weight loss kind of goal. Because, if we think about lose weight as a goal, there are plenty of ways to do that aren't necessarily really good for yourself, like removing limbs. It's like, oh, well, yeah, technically I lost weight, but that that's not aligned with the ideal outcome like for most people. So I think that shifting focus from that outcome to the input can be a really good way to help yourself out. I also think that narrowing focus, like if that's the thing that's most important, the thing we most want to make progress on, but it is also the thing that is kind of often taking a back seat. It's like, okay, well, maybe I need to eliminate some of those other projects that, because they're easier to work on or they're more exciting to do the actual work or whatever, more fun, maybe I need to actually park those in favor of focusing on this other thing, in favor of making that more of the priority, while also trying to make sure that Rebel Brain doesn't kick up a stink. But alrighty. So, stuck on crutches for 2 years. Wow. And current renovation work is to put downstairs bathroom because your house is very steep, narrow stairs. Yeah. Hopefully that one works out well for you. So similar idea with the quarterly plan. All right, we're just going across the quarter, or the however many weeks you've got in your quarter. For me, it's 13 because I don't use week 14. We'll just scribble that one out and plonking in your tasks. It's good to note that for some goals, they will not get worked on in every single week. And that is totally fine, especially if you're the kind of person who likes to work on a multitude of different things. For my Know Your Worth workbook one, because I have that want to make it, do a chapter each week for the first 12 weeks, I need to do those initial tasks in week one. Or technically I could do them in week 0 if I wanted to kind of like prepare myself for success in the next quarter. I could do that as part of reset week. But there are other ones, let's just say that I wanted to tackle a decluttering project or something. Because I don't necessarily need to do decluttering every single week of this quarter, maybe I just focus it on set periods. Maybe I just say, the third week in any cycle, I'm going to do some decluttering time. So I could put like decluttering time here, I could put some decluttering time here, and I could put some decluttering time here. Maybe if there's only like a particular space in my home that I wanted to focus on, I could be like, okay, this is going to be my kitchen declutter, this is going to be my like living room declutter, and this is going to be my bathroom declutter or something like that. So maybe I just like give myself a set space or a set, amount of time or whatever. Whereas for some people, they're like, no, I want my decluttering to be spread out over the entire of the 13-week period. So maybe they would put theirs on the weekly schedule to say, every Thursday night, I'm not having date night, I'm having declutter night. And I'm going to take 30 minutes to just, give myself an area of focus in the house to work on. So maybe they've said like, okay, this is my declutter time. And then in week 1, my declutter time is going to be for the bathroom. Then the next week it's going to be for, I don't know, maybe they have 2 bathrooms. So it's the second bathroom. Maybe for week 3, it's going to be the whole cupboard, which I know this out says Friday and we said Thursday, but like you get the idea. So then they go, cupboard doesn't say cup. Is it cupboard or cupboard? It's cupboard now. Doesn't matter. But they would go through and kind of say, okay, this is the weekly action. I'm going to do a declutter. And then on the quarterly action plan, they would specify, oh, I'm going to do, this location, that location, yada, yada. Depends on how you want to break it down and what is going to make the most sense for your brain, for your plans, for your goals. But having these 3 set ones, I find very useful. It's like, okay, well, daily habits, routines, when am I going to do them? Things I only need to do once a week, when am I going to set aside the time? Things that only have to be done once, or maybe they have a repetition that isn't as frequent as once a week. So if we think about that appointment that I have every 3 weeks or whatnot, if you're wondering, the appointment is to rip the hairs out of my face. It's super fun, super, super fun. So as part of that, then maybe I say like, okay, well, week 3, that is going to be my HR, hair removal, and then HR. And then however many weeks later, she can do the math, HR and HR, right? So those kind of things. It's the board with your cups. Yes, it's the cup board. There we go. Talking about crutches and things is reminding me why I'm thankful my house is a single story minus the basement, and it's great for my ADS. Yes. Yeah, it's cupboard, but I've only heard it pronounced cupboard. Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like the P is very soft, isn't it? But once you have done all of your action plans for however many goals you want to work on, just take this page, photocopy it however many times you need, blank, obviously, print it off as many times as you need. Then we go and map them onto these ones so that we can get an appreciation for how much we're trying to overload ourselves, or at least trying to softly schedule out how you could get all these things done, keeping in mind the fact that you have only a set amount of time available on some of these weeks. You can literally do this process alongside the soft schedule that you made for yourself. So you can say like, oh, okay, let's just say that this week that was not free time. Like, okay, week 3 here, shouldn't be scheduling a lot of stuff because it's a busy week for me. Not going to get a lot done. So maybe I don't do as much this week. Maybe there's another week where you're like, oh, actually, I have a lot of available time that week. Or maybe I have a lot of available time of a particular type, or, those kind of things. Right. So July is set up in your media journal. Great work. Nice. It's because we're lazy as speakers. We used to pronounce the K and G and night. Oh, night. Nope. She can't. I can't even figure out how that would sound. Can I get? I don't know. Nope. I don't know. 1, 2, 3. Looking cute. So once you've done that, and this is part that is very most important when it comes to the Change Your Life Challenge, and also just goal getting in particular, is figuring out how will I know I'm making progress, right? It's all good and well to have made all of these plans that we made for ourselves, but how are you actually going to keep track of the fact that you are working on them? Some goals are going to be super easy. You're just going to have like your checklist of tasks, and you're just going to check them off, and then that's going to be sufficient. You're going to be like, yeah, all good. Checklists, love it. Whereas for other ones, especially those ones that are more like, oh, I have to do this thing daily and I don't want to write out have water, like every single day for the entire of the 91 days of the quarter. I mean, unless you want to, it's your tracking, it's cool. But I find that something like a tracker for routines could help there. You can have calendars, you can have progress photos, videos, anything that's really going to help you feel motivated and just pay attention to the fact that you are making progress, right? That is the most important thing. So when it comes to picking your tracking style, the 3 main considerations: easy to keep up with. If it is not easy to keep up with, if it is too much of a faff, you're not going to end up logging the fact that you got things done, which means you will not have that kind of evidence log to say like, hey, look at the progress I've made. No, right? We want it to be something that feels motivating as well. So this could be like, something that is fun to use and thus gets you excited about the goal and the progress you're making. It could just be that like it's a really good visual of the amount of progress that you've made, anything like that. And we want to make sure it is suitable for the type of goal. for instance, if we had a goal around decluttering digital files or whatnot, and at the end of a decluttering session, you're like, oh, I'll take a photo of my computer. That's cool. It'll just be a whole bunch of photos of your computer, I guess. Unless maybe you're taking a screenshot of the amount of space that you have on your C drive, which my lord, like here, I'll do you a little show and tell. It'll just be a very quick show and tell. Look at this. Ridiculous. This is so red. I have 27 gigabytes free of 1.8 terabytes because I have not processed the footage for the B-roll library. It's getting precarious. Will she even be able to edit next week's vlog? No, she needs to do something about this. But that's something that could be useful, I guess, is keeping track of the actual value of the amount of space that I have in my, my F drive, right? That could be something, right? Depends on the type of goal. All right. So, for instance, for the Know Your Worth workbook, one of the things that I will be using to keep track of my progress is just going to be a little tracker of the chapters and whether I've completed them. And checking off that I have completed a chapter, that is enough for that kind of goal. That's all good. So we say the goal is the Know Your Worth workbook. You can actually write the full goal out if you want, but I'm just going to write no worth because it didn't put the other work in. That's fine. We'll just write you're here. It's okay if it's messy. Doesn't matter. This is just planning. So no worth your, right? I will be keeping track of my progress using a chapter tracker. Right. So it's literally just going to be a grid that has, check, check, check. I got distracted. Now I'm like 3 steps behind. It's fine. It is all good, right? This is going to be available for replay. If you're here on the replay crew, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for tuning in. But you can just rewatch it. You can just go back and rewatch the parts where I was rambling about things that might actually be helpful for the exact section you're looking at. It is all good. So the Know Your Worth workbook, I'm just going to have a chapter tracker, check off the chapters as I make them. That's going to be great, right? That's going to be sufficient. Whereas something like my water intake, if that's a goal, and in particular trying to get a certain amount of fluids a day, 2 liters or more or whatever, right? That one, I will keep track of my progress using a quarterly routine tracker. Because then I can just go in and check off to say, like, yep, did the thing. It gives me a really good visual of the entire quarter's worth of progress on that goal. That's going to be really helpful. So far, I have effectively a checklist. I have a tracker. You do not need to use one of each type. These are just examples. But let's see. Let's just say that you had a goal around social connection. We put that one in. Social connection. So maybe you set up a quarterly, which I've spelt wrong, but you get the idea. Quarterly social calendar. So here I'm thinking about effectively similar to what we had here. So kind of like this one, but you just summarize the different social events that you had going on. So across the quarter, you can say like, yeah, I did prioritize my social time because, if we just get out a pen for an example, I went and hung out with my friends on this day, 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 this day. This is just my personal plan. And I went and had games days on this day and this day. And I had my family over on this day. And then I had my family over again on this day. And then I went to like a novel social event with my friends on this day. So you can really see like across the quarter, yeah, I did prioritize my social connection because these are all the times that I went and hung out with people, whereas maybe otherwise I didn't. So that would be an example of a calendar type of tracking of your goals. So that could be a calendar. Alrighty. Know Your Worth workbook. It is a workbook that I purchased. I can go get it for you. I can show you. I'll go show you. We'll go have a look. Snooping on it. There we go. It's a beast of a book. So this is the book. Know Your Worth. I have not done anything towards it yet, but it has a whole bunch of like chapters and such. Glow up, big goals, game plan. A lot of different sections. Haven't looked at it. Want to do it. I got excited about it because I was just excited about the idea of having a personal development workbook that wasn't one that I made for myself. Like, that's not to say I don't like this workbook. That is far from the truth. I love this workbook, but it's kind of exciting to work on something where you didn't make it yourself, so you don't necessarily know what to expect. So it's kind of a little bit of personal development because it's just, something for me, something for kind of fun and leisure, but it's also something that could also, be brought into my goal setting system. Maybe it'll give me some inspiration for things that I can use to improve this workbook for you or whatever. But that's kind of, something fun. If we think about progress photos and videos, this could be like before and after shots, B&A, before and after. It could be like a process video. If you're looking at doing maybe like, I'm thinking a huge garage kind of declutter and tidy up or something, you could literally set up a little, tripod or set up your phone and do a time-lapse video of you doing it, because then you have like an artifact that shows that you got something done. That's effectively what these things are. The tracking of your goals, trying to set up a tracker that becomes a kind of tangible thing that shows that you made progress. Because oftentimes, I always fall victim to this. You'll make progress on a goal, you'll achieve something, you'll accomplish something, but because there's no like trophy at the end of it, all too often we're just like, oh, yeah, okay, moving on to the next thing. Like, I guess that happened, That's why, for instance, with my decluttering project, especially the things where like you're getting rid of something or whatever, there's just like an absence of something now. So it's like, oh, does that really show that I made progress? When I did my decluttering project, not only did I vlog the process and take you along with me and whatnot to have something, visual to show that I made that progress, I also just kept a little tally of how many items I had let go of. So I could kind of point to it's just a number that I wrote in a journal, but I could say like, I got rid of 1,037 items. Like, there is a page in my notebook that is dedicated to the fact that that happened. And that is kind of like my physical proof of the fact that I did a thing, because if you don't have that, like, yeah, I can remember that I got rid of like, 1,037 items or whatnot, but there's something really nice about having that kind of physical, tangible reminder. It doesn't need to be physical. Like, technically speaking, you could just write up a Notion page or whatever. Like, you could journal your thoughts about something after the fact. Reflection pages and journaling totally count here. You could make yourself a little collage of, scrap bits and pieces that you found while you were tidying up your office or whatnot, and just kind of, have that as a little shrine to the project that you completed or whatnot. The thing is, like we said, needs to be easy to keep up with. Sometimes this is a one and done. If you make a journal page, then you don't really need to keep up with that, which is nice, unless it's a tracker. It needs to be motivating. It's something that either encourages further action, either for this goal or for others. If we're thinking about those kind of goals that are more so project-based, they have that really set outcome, they're a bit more time restricted or whatnot. Maybe it's not the kind of thing that you need it to motivate you to continue work on this specific goal, because maybe the goal is already done, maybe the project is finished, but it is a record of achievement to say, I have done hard things, I can do hard things. This is the thing that kind of proves that I can do that. So it motivates you to keep working on other stuff, right? I'm a big believer in the idea of action breeds action. So even if you're just taking really tiny, small steps or whatnot, if you can acknowledge that in some way, then you are more likely to take further action. But anywho, yeah, that's the first video you saw from me. Oh, that's fun. Nice. I'm glad that it brought you into the fold with us. Let's see. Other things that you can do: graphs, charts, tables. Like, I love a graph, especially for anything like numerically based. If you're thinking about, this is my savings total over time, kind of a thing, and being able to actually see that growth over time, that can be really, really motivating. Or sometimes, we're graphing something that is decreasing, hopefully, and you can see it change over time. And then like seeing that trend or the progress that you've made can be really, really motivating. The thing is that in keeping track of this thing, we do want it to be motivating, all right? So for some people, if we come back to that kind of weight loss example, because weight will fluctuate daily, and I weigh myself daily, but I know that it fluctuates daily. Sometimes seeing this like jagged line is not great for the self-esteem. But if you take it over a really long period of time where you're actively applying the things that you need to do to, tend in whichever direction you want, you can see it go, hopefully, in a direction that you like. If that is not motivating for you, though, if you find that just like fills you with dread or stress or discomfort, displeasure, any of those not so happy emotions, then track something different. Maybe you want to track the number of times that you actually did a certain task or action. So maybe you set yourself up some kind of habit tracking grid or calendar, and you say, yeah, I did this day, I did it this day, I did it this day, didn't do it that day, but I did it the next day. Maybe that is more motivating for you, and that kind of helps you keep going, because you can say yeah, I'm actually getting things done. If you like the idea of a don't break the chain, maybe you set up a official counter for yourself. You're like, okay, yeah, I'm on day 365 of exercise or whatever. I recently got that milestone. That's why it's top of mind. If you find the break the chain, or the don't break the chain mentality to be too daunting, though, you're just like, oh, I feel like I would, first of all, I'd get started and I'd get to day 6, and then I wouldn't day 7, and then I would get to day 7 and I wouldn't do day 8. There we go. That's better. And then I would just be so demotivated that I wouldn't keep going. Then maybe instead of that, you do it more of a how many times did I, rather than how many days in a row did I. So it's with every day that you do exercise, you put a little counter in a pot or something, and then over time you see the little counters fill up. And it's okay if you missed a day. The counters don't come out of the pot. They just keep getting added. And then you have your little pot of counters to be like, hey, look at how many times I did the thing. Similar idea with my decluttering tally, all right? I wasn't expecting myself to you have to declutter 100 items a day, otherwise you break the chain, and blah, blah, blah. I just literally had a scrap piece of paper where every time I decluttered an item, I would come in and put a tally mark. And that was really motivating, because I could literally just see the tally marks going up over the process of about a week, I think is what I used for that one. So that's totally fine, right? The most important things, like we said, it is easy to keep up with. You will actually use the thing, because if you're not going to use it, then there's not a lot of point. It is going to be motivating for you, and it's going to be suitable for the type of goal you have, because there are some types of keeping track where it just doesn't really, it doesn't make sense for that type of goal. All right. So let me know. Any questions? Alrighty, we have a question. So can you do more than one type to track goals, or is that too much? Wait, you might want a table to fill, but also a chart. You definitely can. I would just encourage you to err on the side of less is more, mainly because if you give yourself too much extra homework to do when it comes to tracking the goal, then that can start to distract from actually doing the thing. This may be a niche problem for some people, but for some people, if I have, a goal where I want to fill in a journal entry about it, and I also want to log things on a scale, but then I also want to log it in an app. And I know that every time I do the task, I then have 3 more tasks to do just from doing the task. I start to wonder, should I even bother doing it? Because I'm just signing myself up for more homework. So that is something to consider. If each of them feels individually easy, do they as a collective still feel easy? Do they as a collective still check these items, right? Are they easy to keep up with? Are they motivating? Is it suitable for the type of goal? For some people, yeah, that is actually just an excitement builder. They're like, oh, I can do the thing, and then I can write about how proud I feel about doing the thing, and I can track the number in my stats tracker of how many miles I've run or something. I don't know, it's just an example, and I can put it in my app or whatever, and I can go and tell a friend or whatever else. And that can actually build a lot of hype and excitement for those kind of people, and that's great. Absolutely love it. For other people, the idea of doing all of these things after having completed your action makes you less likely to do the action. Almost forgot to schedule play with kittens time. Yeah, that's important. Make sure to schedule that. That's the thing. The stuff that we're putting on these schedules and whatever, it doesn't have to be the traditionally productive thing. It can just be the cup filling stuff as well. Hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, definitely, you can totally have multiple ways to track a thing if you want to. I guess technically speaking, I have multiple ways that I keep track of these things, because I do a process video. I do one every week to, hold myself to account, but I also find that like using you as my body double, using you as my accountability partner helps make me actually get things done. But then I also have, checklists and trackers that I'm filling in or whatnot, which can help hold me to account and continue to motivate me to do the thing. But a very important part of your planning process, to plan your best quarter three, all right? Because that's the aim of the game here, is the idea of acknowledging the challenges are gonna happen. Sure, we may have gone and mapped out, how much available time do we have and what kind of routines am I gonna build for myself and all of these kind of things. But if we do not acknowledge the fact that there may be forces beyond our control that are trying to derail us, even if not necessarily intentionally or with like any kind of specific malice or whatever, if we don't acknowledge them, we can accidentally get derailed by those kind of things, right? So what I like to do when it comes to robustly planning any kind of goal or project that I'm working on is try and predict in advance what kind of challenges could happen. And this is what we're calling obstacle planning. Typically, I call it challenge planning, but because this is the change your life challenge, I didn't want to get distracted by, kind of confused between the two. So when it comes to obstacle planning, I like to think about it in terms of for any possible obstacle I face or any kind of difficulty I might encounter or anything like that, what can I do either to prevent that thing happening to start with or prevent it derailing me? And what kind of things could I do to respond if it happens to make sure that I don't get derailed, don't get off track? All right. I think that having this kind of, proactive approach of prevention as part of that planning can make it so that it's much less likely to even encounter the challenge to start with. Because oftentimes the easiest way to not let a challenge derail you is to not encounter the challenge. Now, I know that that can't necessarily be the case in every single scenario. Some challenges are just going to, come out of nowhere, bam, just like get us. But if we at least have acknowledged the fact that they could happen, especially for those most likely ones, we can pre-plan how we are going to respond in such a way that is still helpful for us. It doesn't hinder further progress. Alrighty. Biggest obstacle I haven't found a way around yet is motivation to exercise. Yeah, definitely. I can understand that one. I find that I'm very much like a what is it, temptation bundling? That idea of pairing the have to do with a excited to do or get to do. That's kind of like my biggest one when it comes to doing things I don't want to do. But it really depends. Obviously, with every section in this, depends on what goals you're working on, depends on what kind of things you like work for you. And I think that's in part the nice part about the design of this workbook, because I've come with that in mind. It's like, okay, we are going to make this a flexible space for you to plan out things that are going to be aligned with yourself as a goal getter. It's really more about a kind of journey of self-discovery in a way, because as you do this process, I do it quarter upon quarter, you learn more about yourself and what does and doesn't work for you and such, and you can apply that moving forward. So, anywho, this is our table. This is one of the main changes that I made to the workbook this time around compared to last time, along with that idea of the team with a capital T and how it's replacing the Epic Goals Club. But we want to list out what possible challenges we might encounter, but we also want to think about what could we do either to prevent that challenge happening or prevent it being as bad as it could be, like mitigate it a little, or how can we respond? So what I would typically do is I would list the challenge and then I would list out any and everything that I can think of for preventions. It doesn't have to be one-to-one. You can kind of brainstorm a little, write down a couple different things if you want to. So for instance, let's just say that one of the challenges that I run into is know your worth work taking longer than expected. Maybe, in going through and looking at all the chapters, I say, oh yeah, I think that this one should only take me half an hour or whatnot. But then in actuality, it ends up taking an hour or, like, I don't know, 40 minutes or something. And I hadn't initially planned for that. So what could I do here? Like, okay, one prevention that I could do is try and overestimate the amount of time things would take, like build in buffer. So build in buffer to the schedule. Yeah. So if I kind of initially predict, like, okay, I think that this chapter will take an hour, maybe build in an hour and a half into the schedule for that chapter. If I think it's going to take 30 minutes, maybe build in a full hour for it or something, just tack on a little extra time to my expectations so that then if it does go a little longer or take me a little longer, at least I have accounted for that in my plan. What else could I do? We could uh just like extend the project timeline if needed to. That is an option. Just because it's a response you could have doesn't mean it has to be the one you go with. Like, every section in this workbook, this is just for getting your thoughts out onto paper. Maybe I get halfway through this challenge, this working on the workbook or whatnot, and I kind of realize, okay, I'm halfway through the quarter and I'm only at chapter 3. Maybe I make this a 2-quarter project rather than a 1-quarter project. It's all good to change the timeline that you want to get things done on if the expectation versus reality of it doesn't really line up. It's cool. Let's see. Sometimes she can read this word. Sometimes the malaise hits so much that I get angry at my low mood and don't do anything out of spite. That's so rough. For example, if I'm going to track my protein intake better and get my X amount daily, I need a food scale. That's something that can derail me. Definitely. That is a good one to think about. Like, what if there's a piece of equipment I need and I don't have it? Or what if the piece of equipment that I have, like maybe, let's just say it's this food scale example, maybe your current food scale has been having problems. It's like on its last legs or something. So if your food scale breaks, what are you going to do? Kind of thing. Okay, well, yeah, the easy answer is I'll get a new food scale, but have you put aside the funds for that? If your budget is tight, do you have the available funds for that? So maybe ahead of time I start saving up for the replacement of this food scale or whatever. I don't know how much a food scale is. I actually can't recall. My current food scale is great though. I got it for Christmas. I love it very much. It goes into negative numbers, which is just very convenient. But so these are the kind of things that we want to think about. Other challenges that might come up for my example of this learning project or whatnot is, not actually using the scheduled time. What if I tell myself like, oh yeah, every Monday I'm going to work on this workbook or whatnot, and then I get to Monday and I'm like, but like I don't want to do that. Like, meh. So maybe I have a backup time that I can work on it. Backup time. I could make working on it part of a live stream project because then I have you as my accountability buddy. I could, what I'm going to call, microdose it. I like that. I don't know why, but I've started using the term microdose like literally yesterday. I was talking about microdosing Instagram. You're only allowed to scroll 2 reels and then you have to get off the app or something. But yeah, reassess the micro milestones and adjust for more realistic targets. Like that's definitely something that I could do as related to these kind of challenges for myself. So instead of, maybe giving myself the expectation of a full chapter each week leaves too much flexibility for me. Maybe I say, okay, I want to have at least started the chapter by Wednesday of each week. So then I kind of have to preload my week with the work for the workbook, or at least like get into it and start it. Maybe setting that kind of like soft deadline for myself. So soft deadlines. Yeah. So this one's like breaking my work up. This one's turning it into something with accountability partners. This one is, having a set time later in the week that I could use as like a catch up for goal work or something. Those are the kind of things that I could do if we think about it in terms of a different goal. So like we mentioned before, the idea of, oh, I don't have a lot of motivation to exercise. Okay, so motivation to exercise. One of the things that we've talked about in a couple previous videos is the idea that motivation and ability are kind of linked to each other. So flip this guy over. So we have the motivation, ability. So this is like high ability, low ability. This is low motivation, high motivation. This is a really small graph. I'm sorry that I keep drawing things so tiny for you. Let's just zoom you in. Okay. So if you have low ability to do something and low motivation, it's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. But if you have high motivation and low ability, you can still get the thing done. It's kind of like a graph like this. This is what is called like the action line or something like that. So in terms of thinking about the low motivation periods, when we're just like, I don't want to do the thing, the way that we actually get the thing done, which is on this side of the line where we actually get things done, we need to notably make the ability to get it done a lot higher. We want to be in this kind of region here. And that means that we need to have a higher ability to get the thing done. So it's like, okay, well, rather than doing the super extreme, hardcore, intensive, 25,000 weights workout or something like that, maybe we just do a little simple, little easy one. Maybe instead of going for a full hour on the clock, you're going to get the whole thing done, we just make it 15 minutes, right? Maybe instead of making it I'm going to do a completely brand new workout that I've never done before and it's completely shiny and I've never even attempted it, you do the old reliable, the one that you've done before that's yeah, I know what to expect. It's tried and true. So that can be for the ability kind of stuff. That's one of the ways that we could tackle it. That's a possibility for this goal. Let's get this out of the way. Goodbye. Zoom this one out again. There we go. So thinking about the ability part of motivation, make it upsettingly easy. Because some is better than none. Literally, infinitely. Mathematically speaking, some is better than none. So that's a possibility. Just make it really, really, really easy. It could be make it fun. Pair it with something that either you only get to do while exercising or, it's something that you would usually do in your leisure time, but you say, okay, I'm actually going to do some really chill exercise while I do this thing. I know for some people, they like to, watch the weekly vlogs or whatnot because that's something they find enjoyable. They watch it while they're doing exercise. They're like, oh yeah, I did a walk on the walking pad or I downloaded the video to my phone or something and watched it while I was doing a walk outside or something like that. Or maybe they'll listen to an audiobook during or, get some fun upbeat jams that they're yeah, this just gets me in the mood. Yeah, done is better than perfect. Get it done, then get it good. Exactly. So it's, in those periods where you are low motivation, where you're just feeling oh my gosh, the idea of doing this is just, it's a mountain. I need a molehill. Can we just make it smaller? Can we just make it easier? Can we make it more fun, more enjoyable kind of a thing? But preparing this in advance, right? Because this is the purpose of it, right? The purpose of doing this kind of consideration of what is the possible challenge or obstacle, how can I respond, is so that then when we are facing those obstacles, we are much more likely to choose an action or choose a response that helps us, not hinders us, right? Because, for instance, one of my very regular responses to any kind of stressor is takeout. And I think that what I've come to realize is that there's a dopamine aspect to that, the anticipation of the takeout, the kind of heightened, what I keep calling a heightened culinary experience, even though it's takeout, it's calm down with that kind of terminology. It's more so just usually in these takeout options, they've amped up the flavors. It's crunchier and crispier and it's saltier and umami up the wazoo and all of these kind of things. So when I get stressed, I'm just okay, hey, what's a really easy dopamine hit? Takeout. So that's kind of a response that I've got for myself. Not a great one. So it's okay, given that it's a challenge that I all too regularly face, what kind of things could I do to make it so that in those moments I make a better choice? What are the better choices that I could make? What are things that would still give me the good feelings that I want, but don't derail the progress that I want to make? But anyways, have to dip, but so grateful for the inspiration and wisdom. Well, I'm so glad, and I will definitely catch you on the replay. Thanks for being here while you could be. But alrighty, realistic goal is broken up by end of quarter. I'm going to from 600 steps a day to 2,400. Nice, good work. What takeout options can you get that are healthy? Yeah, exactly. There are other kind of other ways that I can approach it that isn't just defaulting to KFC, which I'm doing pretty good with. Yeah. My problem is that I put too much pressure on myself to finish projects. I feel like my problem is that I don't put enough pressure on myself to finish projects. Not quite. I put plenty of pressure on myself. I just like to. The starting is more exciting than the finishing a lot of the time, so that's a problem. But once you have gone through and figured out what your possible challenges are or kind of tried to predict them, then we just want to write them as your obstacle intentions. This is essentially just a way to summarize what it was that you were doing in your kind of brainstorming up the top here into some very easy kind of like structured either preventions or responses. So the way that this is worded is to prevent obstacle, I will do this thing. That's your prevention. Or for the responses, it's if this obstacle happens, then I will response. These are just examples. You don't have to use the exact wording. But for me, it could be that, to prevent me not actually using my scheduled time to work on the workbook, I will set a backup time, or I will microdose on the time that I'm using. So rather than trying to do it all in one session, I will do it across multiple sessions, or I will give myself SOT deadlines, kind of a thing. So we actually write one out. So to prevent me not using my scheduled time to work on Know Your Worth, I will set a quote microdose schedule where I work on it across multiple smaller sessions. All right, so this actually gives me something more tangible, something that I can actually do with that information rather than just a list of ideas. If you were ever wondering what my regular handwriting looks like, this is what my regular handwriting looks like. This is my scribbly handwriting. This is when I'm like, writing somebody a card to say like happy birthday. That's what it looks like. But slightly neater than this, but anyway. Is KFC there better than here in the US? I'm not sure. I don't think I've had KFC in the US. I find that Australian KFC, I personally prefer to New Zealand KFC, but UK KFC, like United Kingdom, completely different. like not so completely different, but like the chips are seasoned differently, the gravy tasted different, the cuts of chicken that they had weren't all the same. It was nice, but it was definitely different. It was not what I was expecting. But let's see. I had declutter old paperwork on mine for about 18 years. I would always this month. I will do it. I can do it. Yeah, for sure. And I think the thing is that with the idea of decluttering paperwork, and let me know if you guys relate. Sometimes I will have a project that even though consciously, top level Jess knows she does not have to do it all at once, subconscious Jess still treats it like she has to do it all at once. And thinking about like my B-roll organization, part of the reason why I put it off is like, oh gosh, editing like 1 week of B-roll takes forever. Like, yeah, but you actually don't have to do the whole thing in one setting. Like you could just jump in for 5 minutes, do a little sort, and then like, give yourself a little kind of marker that says, hey, you were up to here, and come back to it the next day and do another 5 minutes or something like that. Similar idea with the paperwork, right? Like if you're thinking about it in your head, it's like, oh God, there's so many papers that I need to deal with. There's like so much work that I need to do with and that kind of thing. Don't think about it in terms of, it's so easy to say, don't think about it in terms of like all at once, but kind of like what was mentioned here, right? Like I actually started my digital declutter and really finding it satisfying. It's so exciting that you're getting it done. But once you start, it's easier, right? Like what's the kind of smallest start that you can have for your thing? So instead of saying, oh God, I have to deal with all the paperwork, it's like, okay, I'm going to pull out 3 papers at random and I'm going to figure out like how I want to organize them. Or like I'm going to see which of those ones can go into the shredder versus ones that I actually want to file properly. Or it could be, instead of trying to do a full kind of sort, maybe instead of a full sort, you're just kind of sorting it into general piles to start with. So like if this is the fat stack of paperwork, there's a beautiful stack, don't be fooled, those are papers, right? Maybe rather than doing the proper official kind of sorting, we just sort into like, yes, I must keep this one, I am unsure, I have to check this one with somebody else, or like do something with it in that kind of respect, and then this one can go in the trash. There's a trash bin. So then I end up with like 3 smaller piles, one of which I just need to kind of get rid of, which is kind of something, versus ones that I have to kind of like go with each individual thing, be like, oh, this one has to go into like this very specific folder network and it's going to go into this folder. It's like, don't take yourself from the full pile into the very granular, just chuck it into the first 3. Also, this is important, right? I need to shred by hand. Ugh. All right. But do you? Maybe that is the case. Maybe you do actually need to shred by hand. But instead of doing it by hand, instead of doing it yourself, like, DIY and having to shred it by hand, and what a faff, is there some kind of place that you can go and maybe pay a fee that's like, I don't know, I'm just going to say $20. Maybe they charge you like $20 an hour to use their shredder, and you can just put them through the shredder and do that. And then rather than having to sit there and get paper cuts and like mechanically do them all yourself, you could take this, once you've done your initial sorting, take your now smaller bundle of paperwork to the shredder and just get it all done there. I know that when we had documents to shred, Vogel's just like, I'll stay late at work one day and I'll take them to work and shred them so that we don't have to shred them all ourselves by hand. Maybe you don't have a Vogel, but like, is there some kind of service or facility or waste disposal or whatnot where you could do that? I don't know. Does it have to be shredded, or could you use it for kindling on a fire? Like, I don't know. But these are things that just make the process a little less daunting, a little easier for yourself, right? Staples, and you believe it's £1 of paper. There we go. Maybe Staples has it. I don't know if you're in a place where you have a Staples. I don't have a staple. But yeah. This is also a good question. Is the B-roll important? To me, it kind of is. And I know that it's going to make my life easier. It's just one of those things that because it doesn't have a deadline, we'll write this down. I keep putting off the B-roll. It's because I keep treating it like it all has to be done at once. I keep putting off the B-roll. It's because it's the kind of thing that doesn't have a deadline. I built it up to be this mountain in my head. It doesn't need to be a mountain. Hopefully all of this is helpful. I mean, obviously, these are all kind of ideas when we're talking about any kind of specific examples or whatnot. They are just ideas, but it's just intended to help you think laterally. Like, it doesn't have to be this is the only option. For most goals that we have, for most projects that we're working on, there are multiple ways to get a thing done. And some of those ways are going to be way more appealing than others. And for some of them, like, if we think about this one here, maybe I don't have the funds to do the shredding. Maybe I don't have the available cash to do that right now. But if you've at least kind of put a pile aside, maybe like, I don't know, put it in a box. Yeah. And then maybe I can save up to do this so I don't have to do that. It just depends on what's going to be most important to you. Like, is it more important to save the money and then just have to do the mechanical work for it? Or is it more important to get your time and your the like, I don't know, safety of your hands back and do that instead? But let's see. You should organize to show Vogel your process each day and night. You feel like you need to make him proud. I could, yeah. This is the progress that I made today, babe. Like, please, I would like to have a round of applause, please. But alrighty. So remember, obstacle planning, all right? We're just predicting the challenges. We don't actually have to come across them. We may not actually be able to predict all of them, but it's really just trying to make it so that we can think of either a prevention technique or a response to the challenge that does not derail us. And when you're trying to think of your responses, also try and think about it in terms of not necessarily like all of the goals at all the time. We don't want to overload ourselves here, but does it work against any of your other goals? Like, if you have a savings goal, for instance, thinking about that, the shredding thing is a $20 or like, however many, I just said $20, but is this charge aligned with your other goals? Is this charge going to be something that, is detrimental to those other ones, or can it kind of, be done alongside that and still be okay. But that's just a thought. Do you know the 4 types from Gretchen Rubin? I am aware of Gretchen Rubin. I am not aware of the 4 types. I would question, what are the 4 types of what? I am now intrigued, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. But yeah. ADHD makes things you're not interested in chemically difficult to start. Stupid dopamine. Exactly. And that's why, sometimes pairing that thing that is meh and you don't want to do it and it's just like, oh my god, giant eye roll, like, please, can I do anything else? If you compare it with something else, or if it's the kind of thing that does not have to be done by you, can you get somebody else to do it? Because when I was getting my ADHD assessment, one of the things that they asked me to do to kind of confirm whether or not it would be worth pursuing was send in my school reports. I come from the time where school reports were on paper. You didn't get a digital copy. So we had to digitize, 18 years of school reports. Something stupid like that. So I put it off for a year because I was like, absolutely not. That sounds like the most soul-sucking activity known to man, like having to go through them, take out all the staples, and then scan them all individually because my scanner can only do like one page at once. And I told Vogel about it. He's like, I can do that for you. He's such a good egg. So literally, I just went through the pile, sorted into, yes, I want that scanned. No, I don't need that scanned. And he went and took it to work and did all of the staple removing. He just like watched a podcast episode on his phone or something while he went and scanned them all. And he went and put all of the file names in. And then I could send that off to the, ADHD assessors. And I was like, wow. I put this off for a year and you got it done in 2 days for me. So he's this is also a thing. Doing things for other people, so easy. Doing things for ourselves, gross. He's such a good egg. But if you were wondering, yes, I did get my ADHD assessment and I have recently started on my ADHD medication. That's kind of exciting, but challenge ready, right? That is your planning process pretty much done. The next real thing to do, though, is to take all of those plans, all of the scrap paper that you just kind of made, kind of confirm it for yourself. A lot of this was just the potential stuff that we might do. This was just our kind of soft schedule for things. These are the goal plans that you have at the moment. Maybe you want to go and formalize those into a space which is more permanent than just on scrap paper. I usually do. I have a full separate goal planner for this kind of thing. But do not let that formalization process of bringing it over into a space that is something you're going to use over the span of the quarter or whenever else. Do not use that as an excuse to procrastinate on getting started. I know that is easier said than done. I know for some of us, we like to have our plan perfectly laid out and perfectly set up in our journal and such before we take action, so that then when we start taking action, we can check it off right away on our little trackers and all of these kind of things. I'm not meaning this to sound like I'm trying to belittle you, because I do the exact same thing, right? Right? We do not have to have it perfect to get started. Getting started is the most important part here. And technically speaking, you've already done that. Round of applause to you, because making your plan is getting started. Now, as we have a plan, we just need to go and actually take goal action. All right? If you want to come along with us and, work on these things with our accountability group, the group of goal getters who are also going to be working alongside you across this quarter and beyond, then we would love to have you as part of the team with a capital T. We have a link in the description box, or you can scan the QR code on screen to join us. We are having our official opening of our community space, which is on Discord. That is only one of the perks you receive, though. Right? There are other perks associated with the membership. You can check out the full list with that QR code or by hitting that button down below. It doesn't just sign you up right away. That would be awfully rude. So you can look over what perks you might want to receive and jump in and join us. But I hope this was helpful. I hope that you liked this. I certainly did. I feel like even though mine was, a lot of just general example giving, I find that this kind of way of organizing my thinking really helps me come into the quarter feeling like I can hit the ground running. I'm ready to make the progress that I'm hoping for. And I hope that you feel the same. If there were any sections that you're just like, oh, I feel like I need to go back and do a bit more on that, it's cool. This video is here on the replay. You just jump back and rewatch the section you need and do this as many times over as you need to. But for now, I need to go and record a podcast episode with Mark. So thank you so much again, and I will catch you next time. Bye.